progress.
And then Steve, if you can hear us in the back, we're ready to go live. Just let us know. Okay.
Good evening. Welcome to the work session for the City Commission. Today is Tuesday, April the 11th. And would you please do the roll? Starting with Mr. Mitchell.
Commissioner Mike Mitchell,
Here.
Commissioner Adam Marl,
Here.
Commissioner Frank O'Donnell,
Here.
Commissioner Michael Smith,
Here.
and Mayor Anthony Hibbert.
I am present. So tonight we have one item on our work session agenda, and it is involving the topic that we have been talking about for a number of weeks. And I'm going to turn it over to our staff.
City Commissioners, Mayor, tonight, we'll begin to continue our discussion regarding the memorandums of understanding for complete neighborhood vehicle. So we priority that we went through previously, but I will connect a lot of open questions. We had just started our conversation about the 24 days, the history of the things, and after conversations around maintenance costs, and it's got deep in focus. We discussed the cost, and when we left off the conversation, we left it off with the question around fees. And the consensus when we left that meeting was that it was determined that there should be a fee, for fee and what the fee should actually be. It's left up to discussion, for further discussion, and that's where we would like to kick off for a conversation today.
Okay. I think that would be great. I think, Commissioner Marl, you had a specific comment that we don't have the minutes from that meeting just yet, but as I recall, you had a specific proposal that was sort of a combination of something Commissioner Mitchell had talked about as well. Mike, do you remember what you specifically said about you were kind of splitting it down the notes, so to speak?
Well, my suggestion was just the casual occasional use fee at the $10 that has been talked about. But for, let's call it a qualified youth sports organization. And by that, I would mean a nonprofit that's based in Oregon City and serving Oregon City kids, that they would pay something more along the lines of, say, $3 an hour.
Sorry, Mike.
No, Mike's still there. No, he's just not. Mike, can you still hear us? Get on us,
Well, I hear different people better and worse. If it's easier, do you want to just call it? Can you call me on my cell and I'll just do the audio that way?
Yeah, we'll give that a shot. But let's just keep going like this for a minute. I need to let the system completely shut down, and then I'll start it back up.
Okay, so did you not hear what I suggested?
We got part of it.
I'm going to try again?
Sure.
Okay, so my suggestion would be $10 an hour is just a basic occasional use reservation fee for a qualified youth sports organization. And by that, I mean a nonprofit based in Oregon City that's serving primarily Oregon City youth, that fee would be something along the lines of $3 an hour.
Well, I'll be honest with you, I don't think that's exactly what you said, but that's okay. I'm going to go find my notes.
Well, at one point I suggested kind of a sliding thing, but I think that would just get too complicated.
Any comments about that? Commissioner Marl?
I would be supportive of discussing that further. It was also brought up as an alternative to charge instead of by the hour, just by the heads, by the bodies that are there. And so if that's something that makes more sense and is the easiest way to communicate the direct cost impacts that this policy has on our residents, then I think that would be another viable alternative as well.
And for Commissioner Mitchell, I'm going to give you a call right now, and we'll just switch to that audio, all right?
Okay.
Yes, we can. Thank you.
And you can hear us okay?
Yeah.
So I think, Mr. The art director, we talked about some proposal that would involve creating a fee, but we hadn't got down to the details. Do you have a suggestion at all? I know what your position was. I'm sure it's the same.
Well, my position is I'm not sure we ended the meeting with an agreement that there should be a fee. It was, so I disagree with that summation. Secondly, I made the point before, and I try to do it from the humanistic viewpoint. Easier to raise strong children than big broken adults, and that family disappears in the wind. And when I see what the youth organization is being charged, and I have a long history with them. Some of these people that represent the organizations, I have the honor of coaching, and I see how they turn out. So when I look at what the Oregon City Youth Sports gets and what's represented that they get, I take issue with that because they take care of the infields, they take care of everything. You're going to cut the grass. I don't see what service the park gets that is above and beyond normal park service, except I do agree that if they were to the tournament, and I don't think they would even take issue with this, and they put an extreme use on there, that there can be some fee on that for holding the tournament. I get that. But day to day, I think the value of supporting our youth far exceeds any income stream that we're going to get from this charge. And I think as a government, we need to start looking at, government always looks at the income side of the equation. Try looking at the expense side of the equation. What could we have saved? What actions could we have taken where this would become unnecessary? So for me, I'm back to zero because I hear all these numbers. I don't think anyone's deprived from playing on fields. If that was a concern, why did Parks take field number 4 out of service and change it for a while? And they did. So I think there's plenty of opportunity for people to play. You have to document the need every time that people did not have the opportunity to play because of an organized sports event. Soccer, they play on the grass. You're going to cut the grass anyhow. They want it. I watch what Oregon City Youth Sports does because I live next to Chief. And I see him grab the field, and I see him clean it, and I see him take care of it. And if you look at some of the submittals by some people, and specifically there was a very good submittal by Jennifer Costanzo that documented that some of these things that are supposedly done, they don't occur. When's the last time we repaired a backstop? They don't. There was one, I think, that had to do with an ice storm. So I'm saying, what are they getting charged for? And why should they be paying it when some of these things are normal park maintenance? I'm all for supporting the park system. I'm just not ready to do it on the backs of children. And we got a budget coming up. What do you need? And let's get it some other way. And I'll stand by that. So I stand on not approving a fee. And if we come down to it, that's probably where I'll end up voting.
Absolutely. Yeah. Just for the audience, we're not voting on anything this evening. This is a work session. So we basically just try to come to a consensus and then we deal with voting when we come back into a regular session.
You know, we've heard from parks, we've listened to all these different reports, and what we've got from the users, the people most affected are a series of submittals. So I like everyone's had the opportunity to read those because they're very powerful and they're very accurate. So I'll stand on that.
Yeah, and unfortunately, just because of my schedule these days, I sent a late email to Scott and asked him for some information, and I don't know whether he was able to get that and respond back to me. I wanted to know about the demographics, because again, where I'm coming from is I'm concerned about parity across the board for the entire community. I know we represent youth sports. We represent this group, we represent that group, but we have other group of people out there that are not represented, that are just our regular community and regular citizens. And what I've been wrestling with on this is the entire idea of equity and parity across the board. What I'm concerned about and that's why I had asked the question at the meeting several times, is that I'm interested in knowing, what are the demographics of the people, young people that are playing, you know, who's not at the table. I don't know who's not at the table, because I don't have the opportunity to go out and view what they're doing because of all the other things that I have on my plate. So I'd like to know that. I know that we have a number of community members here. We don't know whether they can sign up for sports, but I'm just interested in knowing in terms of equity across the board before we start it.
Let me respond to that.
So, but I don't know if you can answer. I know you can't
I
answer.
want to give you an insight into this organization. I know that you champion DEI, and I believe in it when there's a need for it, but I want to look at this organization. This organization does not ask if you are white or a person of color or your religious preference or your sexual orientation, nothing. All they ask is, do you want to play sports with this organization? And if that answer is yes, you're invited. And the only obstacle to a child playing is financial. And guess what? They tender a scholarship program. So if you look at the Oregon City's makeup, I think it would be a disservice for them to put on an application, your heritage, your ethnic group. We don't need that. All we need to know is, kid, do you want to play ball and have some fun with the rest of us? And that's where it's at. DEI exists for a reason, but to insert it into something, it's a one function, like Oregon City Youth Sports Day with an open door, all are welcome. Then why insert DEI into that equation?
I didn't ask the question.
Well, I'm responding.
I know I've asked the question by community members who are people of color who do not feel comfortable in that, and why I'm not asking them that question. I said, well, I would be interested in knowing that. So we could just put that over here because it has nothing to do with DEI. It has to do with responding to a community member.
Well, if you look at the Google population of Oregon City, 92% white, 4% mixed race, 0.6% that identify themselves as black or people of color. And then there's other races in there too. Oregon City Youth Sport Club certainly reaches out. All are welcome. What better thing can you have than all are welcome? I mean, how can you try to insert something that those people are unhappy with, and let them come forward and specifically ask the question, and it will be answered.
Thank you.
But I do believe in the DEI piece where needed.
Commissioner Ryan?
I don't have that. I agree with that.
So we have a suggestion from Commissioner Mitchell to look at a split sort of fee.
Well, you know where I'm at. I'm
I
not
understand.
educated.
I understand. Go ahead. Go ahead, Michael.
I understand where Commissioner O'Donnell's coming from, and I don't disagree at all. And I know that we're not fixing or even really making a dent in our parks deficit, funding deficit, whether we do this or not. I guess my main reason that I think there should be a small fee is the fact that they have the ability to reserve those fields, and have the ability, if two teams roll up to play a game and there are citizens already playing a game of workup or whatever they're doing, the youth sports organization has the right to tell them they have to leave because they have a reservation. And is that not worth something? Once you go past first come, first serve. Same thing with a shelter. If I want to have a family picnic, I can roll up and use a shelter anytime I want for no charge. But if I want to be able to have it guaranteed and be able to tell somebody who's already there that they have to leave, I just think there should be a fee with that. And it has nothing, honestly, at this point, has nothing to do with the funding, because we know we're going to have to fix it in the budget. It has more to do with that reservation piece. And I'm not gonna, this is not worth a sword worth falling on either way.
No, I will say I agree with you on that, because it gets down to the exclusivity. I know I have reserved shelters in the past, never had an issue because Parks always puts up a sign and said, this is reserved, and we put down the time. And so people are very accommodating if they're using it. I've never encountered that, but I've seen it in other parks where they've got signs up, and it seems to work. So I don't have an issue with that. But yeah, it's the exclusivity.
Well, let's see how many times that has occurred. How many times has there been a conflict in the use of a field? Maybe our city sports people can tell us. Maybe isn't scheduling done through your department? How many calls do you have where people want this and can't get on?
Well, we would set it up so that there's no conflict. So when the baseball fields are reserved, we do not allow the shelters to be lit.
Not the shelters. I'm talking about the
So
fields.
so that's one of the conflicts of the
It could be somebody wanting to use a shelter when there's a game going on and there's other things. It's kind of like too much.
I mean, you could change it when the baseball fields are on, when the games are going on. There's no way that we could rent the shelter so we could shut it down for then there would be any confrontation or problem. Sorry.
Honestly, I don't know if the two are related.
Commissioner Marl had his hand up.
Yeah, so I agree with Commissioner O'Donnell's sentiments on the DEI. That's not the approach that I'm taking to this. It's more the way that Commissioner Mitchell put it. I think, and I agree, that it's important that these groups are open to all, and because of that, the service to non-residents, the service to people who are not directly in this community and whose tax dollars are not paying for the upkeep of those parks is something I think should be taken into consideration. And over the months that we've been discussing this, I've been reaching out to friends in other cities and just asking, like, are our parks people crazy? Are they crazy? And they say, well, what are you talking about? And I explain the situation, and to them it's just a no-brainer that this is something that would occur in a city because it's a best practice.
Which is
to have some sort of nominal fee for a reservation for a specific group, looking at it no differently than a shelter reservation or something like that. And so just based off of all those conversations I've had and the disbelief that I would even bring up such a topic to some of our colleagues in other communities shows to me that we need to be looking at this not necessarily as a way to recoup money and make up the deficit on the students in our community, but just as a simple matter of this is how we do it for these things over here, and this is how we should be doing it for other amenities in this community that could otherwise be enjoyed at that time by the public.
I did some of the same thing. We might have called the same friends. I reached out to some folks that I know in Southern Oregon just to check in, and everybody charges something. And again, even if it's just covering the cost of the our administration, somebody dealing with the reservation, dealing with all that, whether it covers it in full. I'm not saying I agree. We're not here to make money. The bigger issue that this is just a little tip of the iceberg is the entire fact of the deficit that we have in our parks department. That's a different discussion. And it's something we've been, for those of us who lived here a very long time, have been struggling with for a very long time on how to fund our parks so that the expectation of our community is what it should be. We don't have enough people to go around. We don't have enough resources to go around. And, this has been going on since I've lived here. It was an issue every budget session that I was involved in as a staff person. It's been a budget issue since I was on planning commission. I mean, it's just, like I said, we can keep going on and on. And to me, it's a part of the bigger issue. So.
Well, let's not forget it started out as a revenue stream for park maintenance. I'm okay with abandoning that, as we should. And if there's going to be a fee, remember, whatever fee you insert gets passed down to the parents of these children. So you're talking about promoting attendance and participation and all the benefits of that I talked about besides teaching skills. So if you're gonna do a fee, you know, and it sounds like you're gonna, then make it nominal and minimal. And don't be escalating it year to year, because as money decreases in value, everybody is already strapped. This is a good service, it has a benefit to the community. There'll be things, I won't go down the path of the benefits that will go unseen because the bad parts never happen. But there's a benefit, and I will supporting this organization and what they do in any way possible. And if this commission decides on the fee, my hope is it's minimal, and not escalated.
Go ahead, Robbie.
I'm somewhere in between. But, after sitting through, I don't know how many of these meetings, and hearing, I don't know how many staff reports, and watching, I don't know how many citizens sit there and not be able to say one damn thing. We gave them the MOUs, we scrapped them all. We are now deciding what those MOUs are gonna say, and we're deciding what the fee is. And since our department didn't negotiate in what I would say a fair way with these groups, we need to hear from them what they think before we make a decision. We've seen some letters in writing, but I know that so many of these people have sat through many, many meetings to have absolutely no say in what they think it should be. And so I assume we're set up for public comment. That's up to us to decide. I would highly recommend it, since these citizens, it actually is the biggest turnout we've had in all these meetings. Usually city expects that to go down every time we have a meeting, so I'm glad it's up, especially since I don't think any of these groups were notified like I was asked to do last meeting.
I'm sorry.
How many of these groups were notified by the city that this meeting was happening?
Excuse me, we are not having.
I didn't- Well, I didn't really,
Thank you.
Mayor, I didn't really expect a comment from the audience. In fact, I know the answer.
So,
It was just, as of Friday, there was nobody notified, and as of Monday, well, no one notified. Yesterday, I think maybe afternoon sometime during the notification. But most of these people are here because they've talked to us individually, and we told them to be here.
Mr. Marl, could you please let us know the answer to that question?
I sent out a reminder before the prior meeting and yesterday.
Yesterday. All right, I want to hear from,
Shall I? So notice was sent out.
the public generally work in individual groups, which is what was specifically asked.
And he said individual groups. Okay, so we,
All right, are we set up for public comment?
that has not been determined.
Well, I have no set up for it. I'm not asking if we've determined it yet. I would ask that next. I don't know how this commission can make a decision, and we're not making a decision tonight, but without hearing from the public. If we aren't able to hear from the public, I don't want to have to ask them to come to another regular session meeting to be heard again. If they've been here 2, 3, 4, 5 times at this point.
But we haven't had any public hearings on this. We have only had work sessions, which are discussion.
And as you know, it doesn't matter. What matters is where the three of us sitting here want the public to talk today, and I'm one.
Absolutely.
I'm two.
I'm 3.
There you go, let's start it. Start with,
Excuse me, I appreciate your comments, but you are not running the meeting.
so, are we gonna do, we've already had our discussion, so I think we all.
We've had some discussion. We've talked about fees. We've not had a discussion about MOU.
Okay, then when on the agenda is public comment gonna be, since we have 3 commissioners asking for it? I'll make a motion to have, make a motion.
No,
Are we gonna,
we don't allow some, let us finish our discussion.
we've finished the sport
On the fees,
already?
we don't need to have a discussion about MOUs.
I would ask for public comment on that.
So we have received comment, we have received comments about MOUs.
You can talk like one, I'm just asking, when are we gonna have the public comment that 3 commissioners just sit back for?
after we have a discussion about.
If you never know, it's allowed for a meeting, we delay that until the end of the meeting and not allow it.
And I will go back on what I said before, is that one of the things that I was having a difficult time is I wanted to understand where we were. We've
If
received.
you haven't understood that in 3 meetings, then
I do understand where you are coming from, yeah.
okay, well, here's what you don't understand. You don't understand
Okay.
because you have not looked at that. I'm just asking you a simple question. When in this meeting are you gonna allow it?
We're having a discussion about the memorandums of understanding, and then we will have people come and
Who's
talk.
finished with this conversation ready for public comment?
I am. So what I asked you earlier is that we have 2 topic items here.
We're gonna, we can have the public comment that's here for the field to deal with that. We've had our discussion with the public comment about, we've already had the discussion about the work field. You went around to each commissioner, have you not? That conversation's done. So we take public comment now from sports, then we deal with permittator, which is gonna be a lot funner. I'll let you run the meeting, but we better get to public comment at some point.
It may have value to survey the audience, see how many are here to speak on Oregon City.
I'm not interested right now in having people raise their hand about anything. I'm interested in, I'm interested in
At what
having,
point are we gonna move this conversation?
I think we prefer that it all happens at once.
I do too. I don't want it split or bifurcated.
Well, that's 2.
So let's talk about the
So we're going
MOUs.
to 3 asking for a public comment, 2 saying the word.
Well, I don't care if it happens right now, I just would prefer it to all happen.
Okay, let's do it. That's 4.
Do you have any other comments about the memorandum?
Not until I hear from the public. We haven't got the MOUs yet. I want to, first, MOUs next.
Okay. My dear audience members, if you have something new to add to this discussion that we have not received in your communications, and I have read every single one, I would appreciate it if you would come forward. If you have, I've got slips here, so I'm going to ask a question. So if you have something new, because again, most people don't think we read everything. We read everything.
And I would specifically ask for what you think the fee should be. That's what we're asking. The MOU part will come later. And I don't think any of us are ready to have, any MOU signed off anytime soon. But give us input about what we should set the fee. Either it should be this $10 general and then $3, what Commissioner Mitchell brought up, or, and I assume that, if it's 0 was the, if 0 was the option, you would choose that, but I also.
I would have to take control back of the meeting, please. So let's
Am
have.
I not allowed to speak?
Well, you didn't ask me recognized, so
Usually we don't,
I know, I know you did. So I would like to have, Scott, are you here, Mayor? Okay, come on up, Scott. Yes.
I'm just conveying the fact that, yes, we want to hear new comments, but the comments really should be specific to the decision that we have to make, which is fees, what they recommend fees, based on the fact that they're now renegotiating their MOUs. So as if they were coming in and doing that with parts that they were originally. Is what it's going to be useful for us.
Thank you, Scott. I appreciate your being here.
Thank you.
We're gonna limit this to 3 minutes.
I'll try and be fast.
You don't have to be fast.
I did send all the commissioners some of the information requested. Like Commissioner O'Donnell says, I don't have demographics. I can tell you how many boys, how many girls, what ages, how we've grown the program since COVID put us down to basically nothing, and we've kind of been building that back. So currently this year we're at 630 plus kids in our program. That's a 10% increase over last year.
That's good.
So the more people we can include in this, the better. I did make a few phone calls from some other baseball leagues that we play with around the community, and while most of them do have to pay, they don't do anything on their fields. If they pay, the city maintains the dirt,
They can pay extra to have the field run in line, right? But those are all things that they don't have to do with the organization. We have to build our organization around all the needs of the field that need to be done and how do we get that done, right? There's 9 fields. You guys can't possibly turn over and do 9 fields 4 days a week out in the baseball season, which is why we've always done it. That's always the way it's been set up. If you look at some of the pictures I submitted, I don't know if anybody has it on the screen, but the condition that we take the fields at the beginning of the year, you can't play any of those. It's not safe to hit a baseball on, it's not safe to run on, it's not safe to do anything on. So we have to spend hours and hours and hours with all of our parents volunteering their time to keep our hospitals possible so that we can have safe fields to play on, we can have enough fields to play on, and we can continue providing the service that we've been providing for 20, 30 years now, right? So our stance is not that we don't cost the city any money. Our stance is that we feel like we give back way more than we ask for throughout our season. And we're just asking for that to be taken into consideration. We're not saying that we do everything we're perfect and we don't cost you a single penny. Yeah, you probably hit a sprinkler and portable field drag. That has to be repaired. But for the amount of hours that all of our people put into these fields to make them safe and playable for all of our kids, I think is being minimized, and it should be. The other thing with exclusive use, the way this has always been set up, we have to ask for exclusive use so that we have all of our bases covered. Once the league season starts, which it starts next week, we don't have to get them on every field every day. We have to ask for that in the beginning so that we can have practices. And realistically, we have 2 practices outside this year that we're running in the field, right? That's just what we deal with. But we can't just be like, oh, I think we can squeeze it all in 4 fields. Well, that's after the season starts, we can't, right? But it gets really complicated. We say, hey, give us these 9 fields for the first 4 weeks, and then we need bits and pieces of these fields all throughout. We don't really know what that looks like yet. Do schedules, well, we just got our schedules 2 days ago. So could we now go back and say, hey, here's our event for the entire year? Where can we get back and field local nights? Absolutely. We've never been asked to, but we can. So exclusive use really doesn't need to be exclusive use. It just needs to get our bases covered until we have a solid plan. And to my knowledge, we've never been able to just say, we'll figure it out in a couple of weeks. Let's just play by ear. We can't do that. We have to make sure that if we can look at our kids, if you brought in the association, that we have a coach for the play, and they have a dedicated time they can move on. So exclusive use, yes. Can that be moved around? Absolutely, it can.
Well, that's good. That's new information. The other information, I appreciate. That's, I was aware of what you had said before. So, like I said, I have all that information. Hopefully they all have that information. So, try to keep this not emotional, trying to keep this so we're being logical and we're looking at it in a systematic manner and not getting our tempers up and our voices raised.
Well, at least you're now listening to the public, so you can actually learn some of the things that we've been talking about for the last 3 meetings.
I'm already aware.
The last thing
I do have them talking.
Is when, apparently, I think listen with common hours, our organization out there, it's not to just getting fields. I would fairly underestimate it, and if you guys can find a nice teenage boy that would like to work your field for 16, 15 hours, I'd knock yourself out, but I know that cost will never come out of the city employee. So I feel like that's where we can provide a service that the city simply just can't. One, we probably don't have all the equipment that we've had to buy throughout the years. And 2, I think best case scenario, you're looking at $50 an hour and you have to include benefits and all those things. So, I mean, we have the same equipment costs, the same gas costs. We have one guy that can pay because we simply just can't do all of it. So we really want that to be taken into consideration that our organization doesn't have annual amounts of money. We spend all the money we saved on that turf field. Right, $50,000 to pull out of our bank account that we saved for 10+ years. Because our city needed a turf field for our kids to be able to play on. That's the only thing we've got so far this year. I don't have turf. Some of our neighbors all have turf. Some of them have turf here and there. We have nothing. So that was our big thing to do. And that was where some of the money we had stashed away. That was for a specific reason that was forever saved. And our current budget, if we don't raise enough money, we are at a $6,000 deficit versus what we're running with the hospital.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. Again, I appreciate your information that you wrote because that's important. I was able to read it later. I didn't have to read it in the middle of everything. I could read it, sit down, highlight everything. I appreciate it.
Hopefully it all makes sense.
It totally makes sense.
We're stuck with the administration software that we need to take over, we have to use by the generally mind we have, so it's limited in some aspects, like compared to others, so.
Yeah, it was very helpful. The thing that you said at the very beginning is something that I said from the very beginning, is that how can we look at fees from the basis of flexibility, which you've already said, and how do we take into account things that you're doing that help the city? Because I think there's a give and take there. So thank you so much, I appreciate it. So anybody else, I don't know which affiliations is, Andy, are you with youth work? Yeah, it's come on, please. And thank you again for being here, appreciate it.
Yes, thank you. I wrote out a thing and it seems to kind of go quick, so I'm gonna kind of do it. So Andy Smith, I am Oregon City resident. I'm also the Chief Operations Coordinator for Pioneer Youth Sports. I'm also on the City Budget Committee, so I will see you all in a couple of weeks and we will get some money from the Park Department at one point. Kind of as they said, so looking through the information tonight, I saw a presentation that Mr. Reed put together. And there's a few concerns that I have looking through it. One was what maintenance is being currently done, that they're claiming in that $64,000 cost. As far as our detail is that currently being done? What is the schedule for it? Because I can see that our team does take care of a lot of that. Additionally, the other jurisdictions that have their fields that have a cost, I detailed out some differences between Oregon City and Maine. So Westland is all turf fields. Wilsonville League is primarily at public schools for their baseball league. North Plaquemine is primarily at public schools. Goodview has 4 turf fields as well as 1 league.
And I don't know where Goodview is.
Goodview's in Plaquemine.
Okay.
Kind of Happy Valley, okay, it's in that area. 4 turf fields and it's very well maintained. Like Oswego, so Westlake Park is very well maintained. East Waluga has 2 turf fields. Tualatin Hills, Parks and Rec, Sunset Park, multiple improvements have been completed to their really great sports complex. And then the Howard and Token Recreation Complex with 92 acres. It has 5 softball fields and 2 baseball fields. Willamette Lane Park, so that's going to be the Springfield kind of area. They have 3 sports field locations at Rushdown, Bar Arts, and Guy Lee, that is the turf field, lights, bleachers, etc. And in Albany, the youth baseball and the JVO organizations, they primarily play at the public schools. And then the adult sports are part of Fort Alice Parks and Rec. And they play at Crystal Lake Park, which has 9 baseball fields and 8 to 10 soccer fields, spread out over 125 acres. So $10 to Westland is all turf fields. We can play any time of year. We do not get rained out. I have played in the rain over at Goodview. It's awful. I don't like it. I'm used to dirt field growing up. But there is a clear, definite difference between Oregon City fields, the condition of our fields, the safety of our fields, the rusted old benches, the dirty, gross backstops that have rotted wood, the uncovered dugout areas, and the open areas that spectators have a risk of getting hit by flat foul balls and line drives. I had a grandma flip over in a chair last year at Rivercrest Park. It is not safe. Big difference. If you want to be including costs to our organization, understand when you're looking at other cities, that is why they get to charge those fees. And what we put in here, and the commitment that we did, is we oversee the $50 rookies is 315 players that I oversee, that I'm in charge of coordinating and making sure they have a successful baseball season. When you get a commitment, when you invest in youth sports, it invests in the community, it shows your commitment to the future growth of our community, and it gets those parents, those residents of our city to also want to be involved, to get engagement, and to bring more people into our city. There's a reason that people move to Westland, to Walton, Happy Valley, Plaquemine, and other areas. They work for school, they work for youth sports and organizations, they work for community engagement.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm assuming you're not, yeah, please don't that. I'm assuming you're not here with those previous votes, it's just Joe. Okay, that's all, you're the next one, Marla.
I know, I'm not.
That's okay. You're next.
Okay. Hello, Marl, for Pretty, and I'm coming here as a resident. I've been looking into park fees in terms of where money goes, in terms of the general fund. What I'm concerned about, I have friends who are organizing grants and trying to earn grant money for parks. The problem is that if more money comes in, it's going to go in the general fund. And if it goes in the general fund, how do we track it? We've had a lot of consulting fees that are really expensive. We've had, the manager get hired, possibly more surveys. We've done a lot overall, especially with, park scenario. And we're still trying to charge fees. And the problem is even if we have more money, where's it going to go? Is it going to actually go where it needs to? Where, some of these parents or, those coaches have talked about. So my concern is overall is there's no accountability. And we're talking about the nonprofits. I mean, I'm part of Friends of the Honor Team. And we're talking about 30% probably, or having the city on the fund. But how do you account for it when others can need something or need maintenance? And it scares me that everything goes in the general fund. As a neighborhood chair, my part, the trees were cut down for $26,000. And yes, it was decided to be a learning permit and so. But the problem is 26,000 trees, $26,000 was taken from that park. And it went to the general fund. And it's never going to go back to my neighborhood park, which needs help. And it's not going to go to that community where home street condos or homes condo is coming in, and it's going to put a huge burden on that park. Trust me. And that was donated by a 10-year historic family as a historic park in a historic area. And you know where those hollies were cut down? That holly trees were cut to keep the county there.
And that relate to the park fee.
And that is what you measure with the general fund. In terms of, if we get more money in, how do we know it's going to the right place? As a resident, as a neighborhood chair, as a parent, as a community member, and a volunteer. So that's what I wanted to say. I'm just going to let you know right now, as a planning commissioner, as a volunteer, this process isn't equitable for me. And I am a person of color. I am half Indonesian, I'm a Batak, and I'm Javanese. And this is not an equitable scenario. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And no DEI or any type of scenario that we're talking about makes it equitable for me or other people of color or parents that pay for these things.
Thank you, Sarah.
I would simply say that there's a common theme here on monies going to the general fund, and it goes throughout whatever discussion we have. Is monies that are not earmarked, how are they held accountable? And it'll be, did the press come up in Ermitinger? It comes up here. The general fund is a catch-all, and I think there's some accounting processes that maybe we should review and earmark accounts and put those monies where they're there. And I wanted to respond to that criticism, and I'll leave it at that.
I think that was something to discuss and for, if we get to a place where a permitting, right, if there is money coming in, with one back, we're back looking at, what was going to, how do we get it done? Right. That's just, I think there was money, let's just say there's somebody that comes in, right, is only, America is, and I think it's just, if that's the direction the commission on go, we can make that happen. So I think that's probably for this discussion, we'll probably also work into the budget discussion, how we allocate for the general. And I think for the budget process, yes, the general fund will be catch-up. But through that budget process, we are appropriating to specific departments for this personnel, services, project. So Yeah, we know, hard to understand. When you go through it, look at the line items, which specifically fill that. So it's not just that there's no accountability, and we directly do it as well, as well, in the budgets and that's the mission. Well, it's spent. Now, for what kind of detail you like is, I just did discussion.
And I think there's a general lack of understanding about general fund and what it means. It's not the black hole of Calcutta where the money just goes in and then you don't know where it goes. As you know, because you have the longest tenure, the budget is divided up into different areas. And there are different line items, as Tony said, that apply. Now, we've been refining it over time to allocate where things go. And again, budgeting for any organization, jurisdiction is not the easiest thing. You can make it very simple, but when you're municipal government or a county government or any type of government, it exponentially gets more complicated. But we already made that request, and that is already in the process of happening. And Matt is working on that, and so is Tony and all the other departments. So we have one more person. Do you want to wait till that other person
Just
speaks?
positive topic.
Okay, go ahead.
So, and I think we'll talk about this earlier here too, but individual volunteers would be far more willing to pay fees, to pay donations, if they knew exactly where that money was going. And that's the problem. They don't. And they don't trust the city with where that money is going.
One, because every meeting says different name for a different, we're going back now to urban care. How can we get to that? We'll talk about how we change the names back. That wasn't donation account, now let's go back. Every meeting is different. Every meeting I call it something different. So we have to, if money is spent on the fields, we're going to take care of the fields. Then have no problem paying. That's the problem. They're not seeing the money going there. And so they're volunteer hours. Let's start putting a dollar figure to that and erasing that from their fees, because that volunteer hour is valuable. And we're going to ask for that for the urban care too. So I'm back to the zero fee wave, unless we know where that money is going. If you can show us where that money is going, then it goes into an account that actually says sports field account, not parks and rec account, and then say, oh, well, that's actually a maintenance account for some other thing, even though it's not called that, and no one can believe that, because it's not believable.
Let's keep those type of comments to yourself.
I don't know.
We have a staff here that works very hard on behalf of ourselves and our community. I am tired of commissioners saying things about staff.
I'm just going to say flat out, last week we were told there was no donation account. Actually, the donation account replaced the trustees account, and the trustees account didn't exist. Guess what? All the LEUs this week
Did you hear that Tony said that we corrected that? So why are we having to rehash this again? He said it was corrected. There's going to be one account for that, and it's going to be taken care of.
What about the maintenance account? Because the trustees, well, we'll get to it when we get there. But the trustees account now says maintenance, so where's the maintenance account?
I agree with the concerns that were just brought up. I said it from the beginning that I would not support the fees unless we were absolutely sure that they were going back toward the parks. And so I don't know where we are in the process of that, but that would be something that I need to
So I'd
see.
like to ask Cheryl to come up. If she may, you're next.
You want to hear about,
We would like to hear, you have some new information that isn't already, which you already gave us.
I have prepared a statement, but I have.
So again, I assure you, we have read everything everybody has submitted.
I understand some of this may be something I've said before, and I apologize ahead of time if that is true. So my name is Marl. I live in unincorporated Plaquemine County. I'm the chairman of the Friends of the Ermitinger House, and I, like many of the Friends of the Ermitinger House, have been involved with the house for more than decades, long before it was ever, its reconstruction ever took place. I have to address one, it's on my notes, one comment that was made earlier. I, as the chairman of the Friends of the Ermitinger House, did not received a notification about this meeting. I received a notification about this meeting because I asked my name to be put on the list for those things to come to me. I did not receive it as the chairman of the Friends of the Ermitinger House. I just want to be clear about that. I have heard multiple times that you want to know both sides of these issues. However, only the city side has really had the opportunity, only the city has had the opportunity to present information. I mean, ample opportunities. Friends of the Ermitinger has yet to be contacted to present our concerns. I find myself compelled to speak to the support of other organizations that use the fields and parks as well as for the Friends of the Ermitinger. For the sports, I do not exactly know what these organizations need to do to ready their fields for use. But I've spent many decades with my kids out on the field and I have a pretty good idea. Who in reality does the labor to keep the sports field usable for the teams? Who provides the bases, storage, chalk, the rakes, the equipment for the players, the goalposts, the nets, and the general field maintenance, and get them and volunteers to do it, let alone run the administrative side of an organization to provide the service. In the end, everyone benefits from their work. The parks have less to do. The people in general get to come to enjoy the field, play the game. Families can use them in the afternoon, play their games with their kids, whatever happens. But the city provides the property or the space and the maintenance like mowing and maybe watering. I'm not familiar with who gets water and who doesn't. The Friends of the Ermitinger is a very small group of individuals compared to most of these other organizations. We alone provided in 2022 over 1,500 volunteer hours of labor for programming events. How many thousands of hours do these other various groups help provide? Our 1,500 hours is almost a full half-time position per year. As for the Friends of the Ermitinger, we not only provide time, but we also already share revenue with the Parks and Recreation Department, with over 75% of our events being done in conjunction with the Parks and Recreation. We share all these revenues with which
We've got about 30 seconds. So go ahead.
Thank you. Paid entry and donations 50-50, and that we are blessed to have worked with a great group of great staff there. Our mission is about the house, its story, and helping preserve the history. We cannot and will not change our mission as stated in our bylaws to meet the needs of the Parks and Recreation. We also provide an annual report and a strategic plan for the coming year. We donate items to the house that helps with the operations and programming of the house. Both the house staff and the FBH have access. And we are excited to be able to provide those things. We meet together to plan our coming events on a monthly basis. Your statement about the commitment of the proceeds being going to the house is admirable. However, what is the guarantee about what happens and that it happens, and will it continue? Right now, there is no check and balance system with this account. Currently, you indicated that $35,000 was in the budget for the work on the house, yet none of the work has been done. As stated at one of our monthly meetings, yes, we can fix a few minor things, the porch boards, the painting, and I'm sure that it won't cost $35,000. And none of it has been done, and it's only getting worse. Shall these present needs continue to be ignored up to the end like it did before with the house falling in on itself? The house will need a paint job sooner or later. Probably sooner than later. And what is that? Where is that funding? Have you gotten any bids? The FEH has offered to explore the possibility of grants that may be available to us to assist with this, but we need those bids before we can proceed. The mayor indicated that she was giving a talk at the Ermitinger House. Who extended that invitation? We have extended an invitation to you and to the city staff to attend our events. Only a couple have accepted that invitation. How can you judge our value if you have not even taken the opportunity to experience it? I won't go over the MOU issues other than we are not able to change our mission statement. The timeline for the MOU process for 2022 was different than what I have in my documents. You received several documents, fee schedules that were changed from the July 1, that were changed again in the fall without notification. You received our first MOU and the subsequent MOUs. We received previous goals and lists that we have, and we've increased our visitation despite the lockdowns that we've had. The programs we did continued during the lockdown. So who else benefits from the organization work? For the Ermitinger House, it means more people through the door. It means people learn and have an opportunity to recognize that history is important and that it's more than just dates and places. For the parks, it means families play their New Year's ball games, softball, running the bases, picnic. Sorry?
So could you wrap it up, please?
I am almost finished.
You're into 5 minutes now.
Thank you. Well, I just want to say the city has had many opportunities, and I want to be able to take 5 minutes of at least 5 minutes of time that I hope you will grant me.
Compared to 5 hours.
For the parks, it means families get to play their New Year's football games, softball, run the bases, picnics in the park that are cared for by the volunteers. The city benefits. As stated by Commissioner O'Donnell, can the city provide those kids with the same benefits on a $100,000 budget? In conclusion, what skin in the game do you want? What other skin in the game do you want? More labor? More equipment? More time? Money. The real skin you appear to want is money. Commissioner O'Donnell and Smith have thrown down the glove to challenge their fellow public servants. What is the future? Who is the future? And who of you will pick up the challenge? If you fail to recognize that history is our future, we are lost. If you fail to recognize that youth is our future, we are lost. Our future, yours and mine, and the generations to come are tied to the past.
Shirley, your time is
If it is not preserved in ways other than just a building, it is lost. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. And just for the record, since she mentioned it, I am not doing a lecture at the house under the auspice of my title. I'm doing it under the auspice of that I'm a volunteer also for several museums, and that is why I'm doing it, not because I'm the mayor of Oregon City.
You mentioned it at the last meeting, that's the only reason why I said that.
Yes. I don't have any results with that. So we're going to take a moving right now. We have a vote. I'm going to submit a letter. I'm going to nominate button. Okay, hang on. So again, I would be happy to grant you coming up to speak. Do you have something new that you have not already told us about?
Yes, I wrote a letter to everybody, and I just want to go ahead and reinforce everything.
So if you have, I'm absolutely delighted you're here. I'm interested in hearing what you have to say. We are all interested in hearing what you have to say. But again, I want to emphasize repeating everything that we are hearing it.
Yes.
So thank you. All right, name for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
I'm Tim West. I'm here for the pickleball club. And I think that what has been generally talked about and not really addressed is the fact that you need a public-private cooperation. The ball clubs here do a lot of good service for the city. And they also go ahead and do a lot of work for the fields to make them correct and right for them to play. There are some hard costs to go ahead and cover, and they can go ahead and address those in which they are. So the pickleball clubs, the hard cost there to go ahead and maintain it is absolutely zero, and the club goes ahead and does all the maintenance and provides the service for this city to actually have pickleball, because there are no nets and balls and stuff, and or an organization that will go ahead and alert people that, yes, we play at this field right now. So it's something that you need our clubs, and the clubs can go ahead and do a service for the city too. So it's like, all right, we'll offer to go ahead and maintain and keep things up to date and provide equipment while the club does play and let anybody come in and play. But it's something that I believe that charging the Hillsdale Pickleball Club to play on an unused court where there doesn't exist anything but lines on the field or the court itself is unconscionable. So I believe that you need the club and you should not be charged, and the club is open to every citizen to come and play. And I encourage everybody to do that.
Thank you, Jim. Appreciate it. Okay, we're going to take a 6 to 10 minute break.
All right, Steve, let's go back live.
Thank you very much. We're going to call the work session back into session. So first of all, I'm going to say I'm going to apologize to the public. I normally do not lose my temper, but I like to have a meeting where we are not getting overly emotional. I like to have a meeting where we are being logical because I'm a real process person. I like process, and maybe that's a fault, which it probably is. So for the public, I'm apologizing. And I'm apologizing to you for losing my temper because I will just say it. I let your wave of emotion get to me. So I'm apologizing and I appreciate it. So I want to try to make sure that everybody gets heard. I want to make sure that the commissioners are heard, but I also don't want this to turn into a big blowout. And it's not just this meeting. So I'm just going to leave it at that. So we have heard some comments from members of the public. We have read all the material. I thank everybody out there for coming and participating and how much I appreciate them. And they said that they're glad they're not us because they're glad they don't have to make the decisions. And I appreciate that. So we have heard quite a few things. And we want to talk about memorandums of understanding. And I presume everybody understands what they are supposed to be and what they do.
I just have a quick question.
Yes, sir.
For our parks director, because it was brought up, so I had originally brought up talking to other cities and jurisdictions, and there was a public comment about what happens in other cities. And so I have a hunch of what this is, but of those that were listed, how many of those were special districts with their own entities or cities that had other charges being?
Yes, specifically like 12 and their own special districts, you know, that we have dedicated tax dollars for their program. Westland has a utility fee with the upward of $22 for the parks and things like that. So back the special district. Well.
Yeah.
And for those who don't know what a special district is, could you?
Yeah, that would be good to explain that.
So basically what it means is they have their dedicated board, dedicated tax dollars that goes directly towards parks and rec and their district. And they don't have to share like the police or anybody else. That's their dedicated funding. So they have a huge advantage over us when we're having equal balance and general fund. So we're going to.
Okay, and I want you to know, I appreciate you're doing some calling as well, because I think, we always want to look at comparisons. And obviously, those special districts have turf fields, which we do not have. And, we're kind of, even though I wanted to say we're comparing apples and apples, we're not really comparing the same type of situation. And I was talking to Scott and his colleagues outside, and I just got asked the question. It's like, why don't we have a dedicated parks district? And I said, well, anything you should ask about that. So, and there is a difference, and I appreciate your answer. I had that on my list to get that information out to the public as well.
And I will just note that that would be something that I would also entertain doing. Obviously, that's not the topic of conversation right now. The conversation of like a utility fee or something like that. But we just went out for one to replace our rusty pipes, and that got shut down. So I just don't know the feasibility of going that route either. But I appreciate the clarification on that.
Yeah, as I said earlier, the bigger issue is that we asked in our community satisfaction survey, we specifically, and I think we had a lot of Commissioner O'Donnell and I had a lot of discussion about that. We got in our survey asking people would they be willing to support a parks levy or a parks bond because of the information that we were finding out about the deficit that we have. And the deficit isn't getting any better. We're actually, I think, digging ourselves. We continue to be in the hole. We're not quite to China yet, as we used to say when we were kids. We want to dig a hole to China, but we're getting pretty close. But that's a larger topic, Commissioner Marl. I agree with you. And it's something that we need to do some polling and some other outreach to see, what the community will say about that. We've got other things that we're still paying off. We have a library district and we have a fee on a local building that we were still working on. And the school district just had another big, had a bond measure on. So again, we want to be sensitive to the taxpayers, that we're not asking too much of them. But also there's a level of expectation from our community, and our parks still rank very high. And I just got asked the question again, why can't we use SDC fees for existing parks? And I said, because the SDC fees go into the area where they were generated, and they go towards parks that are in those new neighborhoods. We can't use it for existing parks. And that's just the way that law is written. So it's not something that, that we have a lot of control over. So there's not a lot of other opportunities other than possibly going out for something like that. So is it your pleasure that we come to a consensus about the fee, so we can move on to the memorandums of understanding? Mr. Mitchell?
Yeah, I would like to see us come to a consensus. I don't know that we have one, but.
I didn't say we did. I just said it would be great if we did. Commissioner Smith, you're still at 0.
0.
Yes. And Commissioner O'Donnell?
0.
Commissioner Marl?
So the suggestion for what was put out by Commissioner Mitchell was $10 general use, and then $3 for the sport groups per hour.
Is that what you said per hour, Commissioner Mitchell?
Yeah, that's what I suggested, but that was just a starting point as much as anything else, a point for discussion.
Yeah. I would support that.
Okay.
Like I said, I think for the purposes of transparency and being able to show the direct impact that this will have as it relates to cost increases to the children, I think by person is a way that I would prefer to go, but I would be able to support this as well.
Yeah, I would support that as well. So I think we have a consensus.
Well, I think Mr. Mitchell proposed it as a conversation.
Right.
Is he in support?
Would you support that? You support your proposal? He's laughing.
Yes, but I don't know if we need to hear from Mr. Zook or not, but I would like to hear about the, how we can track that money directly back to field maintenance.
Well, that's a different question. So we're just generally.
Well, no, it's not. It's not really a different question.
It's
Not at all.
Yeah,
When I said that-
I want to know that it's going to go back to field maintenance.
And I said that I would be a no as well if I didn't have the assurance of
Mr.
that as
Zook,
well.
would you like to come up and answer that question? Thank you so much.
Sure. The answer is yes. Anything can be tracked. To the extent that the commission wants to track, we can track.
And that applies for both monies that may come in related to sports fields. And that applies to permitting our house as well.
Right.
We can create those dedicated tracking numbers where those monies would be deposited and available. So yes, we can absolutely.
Well, we already do it for a lot of other things.
Yeah, I mean, yes, I mean, there's always a color of money in terms of system development charges, utility fees that come in. Yes, we track certain things.
Our permits.
And how they can be granted.
I think that the key is not just tracking it, but the general fund was mentioned earlier. The general fund was referenced as a catch-all. It really is it's a fungible pot of money that, if otherwise not designated, it will go in, and at the end of the year, if it hasn't been spent, it's reappropriated at the beginning of the next year. There are monies in the general fund that are tracked and are reserved year over year over year over year. There are 4 specific ones, one of which is parks donations, one of which is the Metro Enhancement Grant, tourism. But all of those do not get lumped in with property taxes and such, and then re-spent in a different way the next year. The accounting department actually tracks those balances. You'll see in the budget cycle coming up that there's a reserve for future expenditure line items. In this case, it's going to be 2.5 million of funds will be tracked across in the general fund year over year over year. So I would agree that the level of transparency can come at a different level. Back in the day, 20 years ago, if you asked Mr. Wimmer, there were funds galore. And in my industry, the best practice is to reduce the number of funds down from, say, the 40 or 50 that used to be there into what's necessary. But that's a choice that we all kind of do. Well, however that size the man, we can make it.
See, I think that for the public perception, and from my business career, there were funds that were earmarked, whether they were for depreciation, equipment replacement, building maintenance. And I think all people are asking is, if Oregon City Youth Sports gets charged $2 a head and they contribute $1,200 toward the field, it goes into an account, a general ledger account that says field maintenance. And there's a notation made that the source of those funds was Oregon City Youth Sports fees. Right? That's what they're asking, not that. And that'll be a similar situation for Ermitage. And that's an accounting exercise I know we're very capable of.
The part that gets concerning when some of us has worked on putting money into some of those accounts for 20 some years and the money's been used for other things, or the accounts have been changed. And that's happened because that happens every time we switch staff or anytime we have someone else that doesn't know what those funds were for. And specifically the trustee account at the Ermitage House. Which I spent lots of years raising money in events for the house to put wallpaper up in the house. Where did that money go? Some of that money went to overages on the construction project. You know, so money is going in and out there that hasn't really been tracked the way that the volunteers expect it to. So I until I actually see that happen, it doesn't exist, because I've been doing this for 20 some years, and every couple turnovers of staff, these things change their names. And so I hope you understand how frustrating that is for people that have spent years. And that's why these people who have worked on the Ermitage House for 20 years don't trust you at all. Now, it's probably not your fault, but it's a consistent changeover in the staff that we've outlived. And we'll outlive again. So we have to make sure that when we spend our time and money putting it into these funds, that it's going to exactly what you said it was going to. Because then we aren't going to give you a dime anymore. That has to set through. That has to get through. Okay?
Thank you.
And so when we get to the Ermitage House, I want to ask very specific questions about that.
I think we're trying to fix that with some accounting practice changes and being more visible. I feel, and I know others on my commission will disagree with me, that the city has been the subject of criticism for not valuing the contributions of its volunteers. And whether it's $100,000 worth of volunteers in Oregon City Youth Sports or $75,000 worth of volunteers for Ermitage House, we as a city cannot provide those same services for that same dollar amount. And then any time there's a grant, you're allowed to make a contribution offsetting, whether it be cash or hours. We need to start recognizing that and give due credit for it. You know, I know we're talking about I'll tell you what, it's $3 when the time comes, and it won't come tonight. Or if it comes up in the next meeting, I'll be a no, because we're not recognizing the substantial contributions of volunteers throughout the city. End of my speech.
Mr. Marl.
Yeah, before we leave the topic of sports fees, I just want to acknowledge that I'm grateful that the conversation we're having about these sports, especially pickleball, is not whether to shut it down, whether to shut down the courts, because as other communities have had issues with their parks and recreation, it isn't necessarily about funding issues because they generally have this already in place. Their issue is neighborhood concerns over wanting to shut down pickleball. And so as West Lynn, as Lake Oswego have both shut down their courts for public use, that makes it even more important for us to be prepared for increased non-residential usage of our public facilities. And so, and again, that's why I am where I am.
Well, we're going to have Tim West keep guard on the pickleball courts and make sure that everybody who's supposed to be there is supposed to be there. I'm sure that they might have concerns. And obviously the issue you're speaking of that's been in Westland Lake Oswego is that it's livability. It's the noise level of the activity that's occurring very close to residential occupancy. And we don't particularly have that issue where our courts are. So we have not, at least as far as I know, we have not heard any concerns about noise. So they're enough separated that it's not making the noise that the communities have concerned about.
Commissioner Mitchell, did Mr. Zook answer your question? Or did you have a follow-up to that?
No, he answered my question. And I guess the only thing I'd say, and I respect Commissioner O'Donnell's position and the way he thinks on this, but I guess in my mind, the difference between $10 an hour and $3 an hour does recognize the value of the volunteer contribution that the organization is doing.
I guess there's a part of me that says if Oregon City Youth Sports walked away and said, you do it, Oregon City, what would happen? And the answer is it would be a dismal failure because we cannot do it. We cannot provide those levels of service, whether at Hermitaire House or on youth sports, for the dollars that these people have contributed. So I think it's just not a recognition of the support we're getting from the very community we're supposed to service. And I certainly respect Mr. Mitchell.
Well, I don't think, well, again, we all have our own opinion. I think that the city does value the volunteers. There are a lot more volunteers in this community than the Ermitinger Youth Sports. There's lots of other volunteers. Obviously, we're volunteers. And I think the city does value the people that contribute because they are community minded. And I appreciate the fact that, we have all been volunteers in other ways for the city before we were on the city commission. And I think that that's important. We have done volunteer recognition, and maybe you think that that's not enough, but I think they get thanked on a regular basis, at least what I have seen and what I have heard. So, all right, let's talk about memorandums of understanding. And I think the first place to start is, do everyone have an understanding of what an MOU is supposed to be? I used to write them all the time for the organizations that I was working with in my jobs. And basically, I think the way I would describe them is it's a delineation of who is doing what. Generally, sometimes there is dollar amounts involved, not always. They basically say, if I do this, you're doing this, so that everybody has a clear understanding of what people's responsibilities or the organization's responsibilities are. So, you want to?
Sure. And are we going to show the presentation or you want to speak? I can.
Thank you, Mr. Zuck.
All right. The next thing we want to do is talk about the Ermitinger House and make a memorandum of understanding.
Could you just start generally talking about MOUs and not get specific yet?
Sure.
That might be helpful just to start up high and then drill down.
Sure. So the purpose of memorandum of understanding is to clarify roles and responsibilities. Like the mayor said, sometimes it involves money or ways where money will be split. It involves reservations. But the purpose of it is to clarify what those roles and responsibilities are. So
with all of these memorandums of understanding, their intent is not to take advantage of anyone. It's actually to provide better customer service, to make sure that we're all on the same page. All memorandums of understanding are up for negotiation, and all memorandums of understanding that we utilize are cleared by our city attorney. All right. So with the Friends of the Ermitinger House, our relationship is where we work together to provide events and fundraising opportunities. We've had a memorandum of understanding since 2018. We had the first MOU signed on February 1st, 2019. And the purpose of this presentation is to talk and to address any questions related to finances, to highlight any of the changes with the memorandum of understanding over the past 3 years, and discuss the need from McBride Powers. So the first thing we want to do is talk a little bit about expenditures and budget code. So we have a building maintenance fund. It's 318-6122. We budget $32,000 each year for building maintenance. This year we're spending money towards porch repairs, window sill repairs, cleaning of the outside of the windows, adding a fridge in the kitchen area, and floorboard repairs. We also have a line item for natural gas. That's 318-6144. That encompasses the main utilities. We have $1,400 budgeted there. That particular line item is overspent at this time because the costs have gone up. And then we have a shared line item under recreation events, 318-6634. This is for several events, and $1,250 in this line item is for Ermitinger events. Also, we wanted to highlight some of the costs associated with Ermitinger House. Our products and recreation manager is responsible for managing the Ermitinger House, and total cost towards Ermitinger House is equated to about $12,723. And then we have a part-time staff person, 318-5130. It's a 0.5 FTE for the Ermitinger House. That incorporates our recreation programmer, and the additional costs there are $35,951. All right, revenue. Ermitinger donation, and this is where I will need our finance director to come back up here and have some conversations about what he found in relationship to the trust account and donation account and the financial.
Thanks, Kendall. As was referenced earlier, there is an account that has existed at least since 2000. It is the account number that's on the screen there that Mr. Reed mentions. That's where the dedicated donations for the Ermitinger House are tracked. And that I have a record of from 2000 all the way through 2023. I obtained that from our legacy previous accounting system, and we've got line item detail on that. So
when you say line item detail,
that
shows revenues and expenditures.
Right.
We can provide that.
Right. So that is where the donations, everything that I understand that Ermitinger external funds that come in for Ermitinger House has gone into that account and is spent out of that account. Not including the city's money. The city's money has been tracked in a separate account. Generally that the number 318 in the middle of the account string represents city money, and 319 represents donation.
Who determines how those monies are expended in that account?
Parks Department.
I would probably be the one spending out of that.
So give me an example of what you've expended them for.
So for example, we just
did a special event this past weekend, and so all the revenue went specifically into that donation line item, which this is also a clarification, like all revenue goes in there, but it's an account that you can expend out of. So we have an agreement that we split those funds 50-50. So I take money out of that account to pay the Friends group from that revenue from that event.
Where does the other 50% of the city?
It stays in that.
What would be an example of the amount?
I mean, if we ended up, wanting to
Cupcakes.
Huh? Cupcakes, yeah. If we wanted to buy cupcakes for an event, we could take out that account if we wanted to. I know wallpaper was brought up. If we ever got down the road where we wanted to do wallpaper, that would be an account to pull that out of. Or if for some reason we ever got to a point where there was not enough money dedicated to the building maintenance or capital improvement project, and we needed, or like a project went over and we needed to tap into that, that could be an example. But I mean, a lot of like what's been going into that account for the last 5 years is just generating and increasing. It's essentially kind of like a rainy day fund, or yeah.
It's kind of vague when you say project went over. A project that the city was initiating or a project that Friends, those kind of things are clarity that I think we're looking for.
Here's some more about clarity. So we were told that the trustee account didn't exist the last meeting, and that it was a donation account. That's this account. That account's not for cupcakes. Okay, trustee's account's not for cupcakes.
Is it
It's
defined?
for wallpaper. It's for uses for the house. It's for capital improvement things, and it's not for maintenance.
And that's listed out where?
Well, I think
let
where
me-
the
let-
term
I'd like to-
came from is
I know, but my
purchasing.
point is, there should be something separate. Somehow the trustee's account morphed into donation account, because you can take money out of there however you like. You can't do that so much with a trustee account. See what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Okay, so that's a problem. The other thing I have a problem with is here, if you look at what the definition for a trustee account is on this new, I think this is the newest MOU. I can't keep track of them all because they're different every time. The second MOU on attached from our report is the newest updated one.
I don't know the order of how they're attached.
The one that states November 1st, 2022 through June 30th, 2025.
Yeah,
That's the most updated MOU.
That's the latest one we've received.
Okay, so everything that said donation account has been removed from that since the last meeting and has been specified trustee account. Yet in the slideshow, it says donation account. So we're still every meeting inconsistent. We need to clean that up. And here's the other thing. You just mentioned when you were talking about the cupcakes and the donation fund, you mentioned a rainy day fund. What is the difference between the maintenance account, the trustee account, the donation account, and this rainy day account? Because if you look in the MOU, are they all the same thing?
Is there any record of a trustee account?
The word trustee
It's in your own MOU. That's very specifically said.
Can you let him answer the
City
question,
account.
please?
I'm reading from the report. The city account established in perpetuity contains earmarked funds that will be used exclusively for the Urbitinger House related project, etc., wallpaper purchases, blah, 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 blah. It's the same number as that is the trustee account. And it was the trustee account ever since the trustees set it up. So somehow what I'm saying is it got morphed into a donation account. And we're calling it that now, I guess. But it's the same thing. Okay? The problem with this, though, is that talks about very specific projects. But here's what's weird. it refers to maintenance and repair. So yet we have a trustee account that here says it's about maintenance. Then we have a separate maintenance account that used to be called generically Parks and Rec. And now we're saying is Ermitinger. And then we have also references to this MOU that the Friends of the Ermitinger House responsibility is to provide money for a rainy day fund. Never heard that, but you just mentioned it a second ago, calling it rainy day fund. What is that?
I was giving an example of.
But it's in your own MOU saying that's what the Friends group is raising money for, is a rainy day fund. Where's the rainy day fund? Is that something we've made up? Is there an idea to that? Is that the same thing?
Matt, can you clarify, do we have a trustee account? Have we ever had a trustee account?
We have, because I know it existed.
What I've seen in the record is essentially what Commissioner Smith has described. At one point in our accounting records, it says Ermitinger Trust.
Yes.
And that is included in the accounting records that I have here. It is one account. It's where, donations from Ermitinger or towards Ermitinger go, as well as expenditures coming out of it for eligible purposes.
So why in this slideshow are we saying donation account, and in the MOUs we're still calling it a trustee account with the same account number?
So the most updated one that I have that I sent, and it's a long staff report on the computer, got changed to Ermitinger donation account. I can give this to you. If you'd like
I want
to.
what's in my report.
I know. I understand that.
And I think you're better off keeping it the trustee account.
Well, it's same, I'm not.
Hey, what's the rainy day fund? What are you referring to when you say that?
It's only a donation account. She was giving an example saying that if there's hold on. She was giving an example of saying that if there was a need where there was a need to pool funds for some program or a project or maintenance, the Ermitinger donation account could be an option to utilize for that.
I know, but here's what the MOU says. The updated one that supposedly we have in our report, which apparently isn't the current one.
Can I give an example?
Well, let me just finish the question. I'm having to deal with the report that I'm given and prepare the meeting for, which I take hours of time doing, even though the mayor alludes that maybe I don't do my homework. But I want to read this. So all throughout this MOU that's on the agenda, which is the only MOU for tonight that the Friends Group saw, only refers to the trustee account. Never once in this entire MOU does it say donation account. And then when it goes into the responsibilities for the Friends Group, it says this. And by the way, responsibilities mean what the city really expects the Friends Group to do. Now, the city can say, we hope that you would do this, but one of the responsibilities should never be the city dictates where that money goes. Because as a nonprofit, they can do whatever they want with their money. So that needs to be taken out of the responsibilities. But here's what it says. Nothing about the trustee account, nothing about the donation account. It says this. This is roles and responsibilities, FEH responsibilities to support the Ermitinger House and OCPRD by raising funds, and this is very specific because the city wants to control where the money goes, raising funds for specific city-approved Ermitinger designated capital improvement projects and for the rainy day fund. So that's not just a random thing, it's in the MOU, it says rainy day fund. And that came out of your mouth, so I'm not making these things up. You guys use these words interchangeably as if we understand what it means. But it's a way to put money into the same fund that you can pull it out, whatever, and we don't know where it's going.
As one sitting on the outside observing, I think terminology is important. I don't want to sit here and think, is there one account? Are there four accounts?
I still couldn't tell you.
And I'm trying to get some clarity. And if there is an account, is it annotated that says that this account shall be used for this and this only? Right. And then it should be clear who controls that account. makes those decisions. And if it's the Armitair House Volunteer Group, you should say that. If it's the city, you should say
The
that.
city.
Right. So then the MOU shouldn't refer to any of the Friends Group's money going into any fund that the city requires the complete control over.
We don't want
Because-
their money. What we're saying is there's gonna be a 50-50 split if we do programs together, and that the 50 that we take is gonna go into the Ermitaine Tinker donation.
Let me read this again. From the FEH responsibility. This is the MOU. Their responsibility is to raise funds specific city improved Ermitaine House designated capital improvement. That's very much specific to city funds. And rainy day fund. That's what it's saying. That's what you're wanting them to sign on to.
Well, that can be modified. Is that what you're asking? Are you asking a question?
I'm asking for a simple question. How many Ermitaire House funds are there? What are their names and what are they used for? That's all.
We have an Ermitaine donation account. Is that acceptable?
That's not what is listed in the MOU.
We can.
So is that what we're calling it today?
We can make sure that that's clear in the MOU and.
It should be whatever's legal, and trustee accounts are legal. Trustee accounts are not for cupcakes.
We don't currently have a trustee account.
Where did it go?
I wasn't here.
I'm not saying you were. I want to know how that would disappear.
Rocky, what I think he's saying is that the trustee account name got changed, which is what you're concerned about.
Of course it got changed because they can move money in and out of a donation account a lot easier than a trustee's account that's set by a trustee. You know that.
Yes, I'm from the trustees.
So I find it interesting how that worked over time. And that no one on staff remembers it, but I remember it, and it clearly existed. So I think we're better off going back to the trustee account that's dedicated funds for the house and for maintenance, not for cupcakes, not for whatever Parks and Rec wants it to be for. That's what it needs to be, because that's the way it was set up when that house was given to the city. And that's our obligation as a city to follow through what Ruth Powers asked for and what her trust designated as to be the way it was. As it says in perpetuity, which is in your own MOU, it says that. So we're just going to today say, well, now the donation fund. Read what you have in your own MOU that specifically says forever. Trust account.
So Mrs. Powers initially, as she did with every museum that she funded, set up an account.
Yes.
The organization set up the account, but she gave money to be used in perpetuity.
And I don't think she wanted it used for cupcakes.
Well, I think what Melissa was suggesting, and I'm not putting words in her mouth, the cupcakes were bought.
I get that. You get my point.
In support of an event that was raising
It's money that shouldn't come out for events.
Right.
Money that should come out for the good
So you're
of the
saying
house.
there should be
There's
a
a difference.
freshman account.
There should be a donation account. There should be a trust account. There should be a maintenance.
Well, the trust account is what Mrs. Powers set up to do ongoing maintenance of the property.
I fully understand that. In fact, I think I'm
She
probably
usually
only
gave
here
about
that understands.
$100,000. That's generally what she started with, at least from all of my research. The Rose Farm has had an account. We don't call it a trustee account, but she gave money for the ongoing maintenance, and we try to keep it at a certain level. And all the money that we've taken out of it has been used for capital projects for the house. We don't use it for refreshments or whatever. We use it for hard cost, painting the house or repairing the steps or repairing this. That was what she specified in that document for that particular property. I'm assuming she did something similar because she used the same lawyer for all of her stuff.
This is staff jobs to know this and to look this history up, to know what we're doing with a house that was given to us and obligated for it. So I'll keep asking the same questions for the next few meetings because I still don't know what the funds exist, what they don't. But I told you exactly how those things need to be very specified, not confusing. And when you give us multiple reports in our attachment that all say different things every meeting, and they're all different. Last meeting was different. This meeting is different. We'll see what it is at the next meeting. But that question's still there. What are the accounts? How much money is in each of them? How are they used? Who specifically gets to say what they're used for? I want to know the answers to all of those at the next meeting. I'm not going to ask again.
It's already in the report.
Can you show me where?
Already in the report.
Show me exactly where.
The amount that's in the account is already in the report. It says, I think it says $7,000. It's $7,060.95 is what was reported in the account. It's an it's an Ermitinger donation account that's managed it's a donation account managed by the Parks and Recreation Department.
But it's the same number as the trustee account.
We don't have a trustee account.
Read your own MOU.
I failed to attach the corrected MOU. This
That's
is the
not my
corrected
problem.
I was trying to show the changes and failed to attach this one.
But you can see that there were past MOUs and documentation that a trust account existed
Yes.
with the same number.
And-
So saying that no trust account ever existed is not true.
I guess my only observation would be a trust account is a very legal and binding
It is
document
very much
to
so.
be administered by whoever is charged with administering it within the guidelines or within what the trust account specifies. And as one who has a trust
There's
account,
major legal issues here.
yeah,
Mrs.
I
Powers
don't,
gave the money to the city to use for maintenance of the house.
but I think it should retain the name trust account. because it's a
Absolutely, it
very
should have
legal
never changed.
definition of what a trust account
And can a
is.
trust account be changed by staff, or does it have to come to the commission?
They
How did
didn't-
that
They
change?
didn't change
We
the
didn't
account, they
change
just, what you're concerned about is.
When I say staff, I mean the staff that have been here the last 20 years when it was a trustee account, because it was. Somehow over that time it shifted. I don't know if it's under your watch, probably not, but at some point it changed. I want to know when it changed, how it changed, so it can be fixed and put back.
Is there an original trust document anywhere?
I have some of it, but this just should be the basic part of a report that a staff would give you when they were dealing with questions on a trustee account. I don't-
You had more time and service than the rest of your staff put together.
And well, this
I-
is
I
Powers
know, that's the
called
problem.
the account for the Rose Farm trustee account.
They're
That's
trying
not
to
what-
get questions based on their tenure, which I'm not saying it's part of that. I'm saying at some point it changed.
Oh, now it's been kind of corrected. Again, terminology is important.
So does what, Mr. Herman, in your revised document, the terminology, so to me, it seems right now, the terminology seems to be the hanging point. That it's called one thing, there is, yes, and the last copy I have does refer to a rainy day fund, so obviously this has been said multiple times. Does it matter what it is called as long as it's specified as to what it is going to be used for?
Got any problems creating 3 different line items for everything else dedicated fund? We'll call one a trust and one a maintenance.
Which one is the rainy day fund? When we say that, is that donation?
Well,
That's gonna be gone. We will
I don't,
clarify it in here.
let me just ask a clarifying question, because if the initial money that Mrs. Powers set aside for each house was for maintenance, then,
Right. Then that's what it can only be.
well, it's maintenance and improvements to the house,
Right.
so. We have, again, I can only use an example from the fund that I know about, is that we have that in there and we've used that for major capital, but we didn't use it. So for instance, when we purchased paint to paint the interior, that could have been considered a capital expense. We took it out of our regular treasury. We didn't take it out of our big capital account. We used that account to paint the house professionally. We used it to repair the steps. We used it we don't use it for routine and ordinary maintenance.
Right.
It's for big, like the big stuff.
Well, and that's why I want with these three funds. With these 3 funds, if it is 3 funds, it's really not about,
It's
I want to
3
know
line items.
what's
There's
the bullet
one
points underneath, right? Because yes, the donation account probably is used for events, but that's not but the maintenance account shouldn't be used for events. The trust account shouldn't be used for events. So that's the problem. If the Friends group wants to put money and knows that the house needs a paint job, they might put money into the trustee account if they know that that money is dedicated or wallpaper or paint. And guess what? We did that for years. Where'd the money go? Because we don't have wallpaper now. And we put lots of money in there over
so
the years.
let me maybe
So
try to-
it's really bullet pointing. This fund is for these uses. This fund is for these uses. This fund is for that use. So that way, when they aren't used that way, we can call you on it and say, that money wasn't supposed to be used that way.
So let me make a suggestion. So rather than calling a trustee account, because that's a little nebulous, there's a maintenance account. I think everybody understands what the word maintenance is. You're using it. I'm looking at you.
I'm looking at you.
I know. So maintenance,
got
ongoing routine, if you need to paint it, that's maintenance. If you need to repair a step, that's maintenance. If you need to do something that is physical to the house, whatever, that's maintenance. Donations that come from events should go into an event type account.
Right.
So that so that you can buy cupcakes to support the event, so that you can get napkins and paper or whatever you need to do to support the event, because you're going to have refreshments or you're going to do advertising for an event. So,
however, I don't want to stop calling it a trustee account if we've never actually legally changed that account, or if we ever had a right to do that.
well,
Is there a chance that the money, like it's not gone?
Oh, I can assure you it's
But
gone.
you think it's been spent on the
Still, I see account zero.
it probably was.
That's the whole reason that it's turned into a donation account, so the money can come out of it.
There's been routine maintenance done over the time that we've all been here.
Not really.
Well, there was some. It wasn't zero.
Most of the maintenance account was spent because of the over construction and the lack of money to complete the project. So that maintenance account was set aside for the future, or until it was cleaned out.
So that would have been the money that was set aside by
That money was set aside not from the past, but with the construction.
So you're talking about the block grants money. We had the money the city put in. That's
So they put in, had a separate fund.
right. But
that's all been.
It was all going into the capital expense for leveling up the house.
Yeah, but that was a separate fund than the trustee account. That was not the same fund. Two different funds.
Because I remember when the caretaker was there and she almost set the house on fire, there was money that was used out of the original account that went to go repair the fire damage, because it was considerable. I don't know if you remember that, when she almost caught the house on fire. That was quite the care. Luckily, the fire department was right there and took care of it.
See, I feel this way. Trust account, a very specific legal document, to be controlled by those who are named in the trust, to be used in a way as specified in the trust. It cannot be dissolved unless the trust provides for that dissolution. That's the trust account. I get the impression that there's two maintenance accounts. Is there a city-funded maintenance account and a maintenance account funded by revenues?
We only have a maintenance account. That's funded by the city.
One.
Building
And what's the source of those funds? Strictly city?
General fund, yeah.
So Ermitanger House contributes nothing, nor is there an account contributed to or run by Ermitanger House that's used for
There was a
maintenance.
separate
No.
everything or maintenance account.
All been managed by the city.
I'm just saying,
Yes.
years ago, there was a designated fund for maintenance Ermitanger specifically.
Right, but that was administered by the city, not by
It
the
was
outside
not
group.
it was not in it was separate from the main maintenance fund and separate from the general fund.
Well, see,
Who
but
would make
I,
those
this,
decisions?
Rocky, I don't think,
That's what I'm asking.
I don't think the trustee obligation exists
Denise,
anymore.
there was a separate trustee account. I'm talking about was a separate trustee account. That was one thing. Then there was a specific line item in the budget for the maintenance of the Ermitanger specifically.
Right.
Those all now mysteriously disappeared. All I'm asking is when they disappeared and how.
So my question is, they're telling you that the name got changed, the
I get
specifics,
that.
Mrs. Powers' deed of trust to us, you have looked that up.
Yes, we have that, and I don't see any reference to a
Trustee account, you send it to us, I looked at it myself, there is no reference in it to a trustee account. In the deed of her deeding it, did she do the typical 1/3 deed because it was for tax purposes?
Yeah,
But that's generally how she did it, at least on the houses that I've researched to date.
she specified that money be set aside. She was giving money in to be used as an account to be added to over time to be used for the operations and maintenance of whatever the house it was. But there's nothing in the deed that says there has to be a trustee account. That's what they're trying to tell you.
I've
Been asking.
So is there something in the deed that you're aware of, Rocky, that says that there's establishment of a trustee account?
The staff own
No,
MOU
I'm
report.
talking about the deed. I go back to the point of beginning, when she deeded it to the city. Her expectation, from what I can read,
Everything that is in city records identifies as that donation account as the trustee account that mysteriously changed its name to the donation account.
well, it didn't mysteriously change, it was changed.
I know, that's what I'm asking. When
And by whom?
and by whom? I don't know how many, and we can say, we don't know. Let's find out. Dig,
It may not be
or I'll
something
start digging.
they may not know.
Well, I'll find out.
Well, unless you're gonna resurrect some people from the dead.
I don't think it's that difficult. I think it's just doing work and looking through the city archives, finding it.
Change in name,
But it shouldn't be changed.
the change in name is significant.
It says
Only in that it very well may allow those monies to be used differently
right.
than they were originally to be used as a trustee account, as a trustee. Change the name, you maybe introduce more flexibility that should not have.
That's pretty much why the name was changed, don't you think?
Could I then offer to do that research for,
You can, but I'm gonna do my own from now on.
Thanks for the offer.
Jacob, get ready for a public information request.
So, did you get a copy of the deed that was sent out in the packet?
I have all that.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm just asking you, do you recall when you read it, there was any reference
No.
in that to a trust account? Because I read it again, and I did not see any
But
reference.
I've been here a long time,
I
and I know in the budget there was a
I
trustee
understand,
account.
so I'm just trying to get the point across that Mrs. Powers did not say that that was going to be a trust account. Somewhere in the city's documents, they gave that name. I don't think she did. I've never seen anything that she's ever put out that's a deed, says a trust account. So if we're getting hung up on semantics of a trust account, we can't go back to proof. She didn't do that.
I'm over it.
No, you're not.
I'm over it for this meeting. It'll come back up again later when I have the proof.
So the proof, the proof that Mrs. Powers established.
The proof that I find about whether or not there was a trustee account. I don't care whether Ruth Powers set it up herself. There was a trustee account in the city, period.
Okay, so we're
There's
leaving,
not about that.
we're leaving Ruth out of it. Because that's to me, well, yeah, she's the basis of how we ended up getting the money in the first place.
We're still talking about it.
Obviously, there is some research that needs to be done. Let's do it. Bring it. We're talking about something that we can't prove or disprove one way or the other.
I would definitely agree. And it sounds like if we're getting down to semantics in terms of what it is called, if you want it to be called something different, then let's get that so they can create the line items for those particular things.
We're just simply saying, if there was a trustee account, we aren't just going to magically just change it to donation. So until we know that there is no trustee account and that it never existed, it's keeping that same name.
Yeah. Okay, so why don't we just keep this?
Because we had a civic improvement trust. Everyone remember that?
Yes.
We didn't magically just change the name. We had to decide to deal with
Then
that
let's
commission.
Then let's just keep the name the
That
same.
is what I said an hour ago.
So let's just keep the name the same. Do we have a consensus that the name will say that the same? Then we don't need to go and do a whole bunch of research to try to do the gotcha on anybody. It's going to be called that account, and then we can define what the trustee account is used for. To further define, yes, that could come up. Okay. Are we perfectly clear? So The trustee account, as I understand it from concerns of the commissioners, is that that is the ongoing maintenance basis account for, and you can specify that it's capital, but let's say the sidewalk needs to be repaired, that's a capital expense. If the floorboards need to be repaired, that's a capital expense in terms of the house. There should be a separate line item that deals with events, i.e. refreshments, whatever, so that that's clear. It's not being coming out of the trustee account. And then if you want to have a separate line item for donations only, then you could create that. To me, it's just that simple.
To me, the only thing if there's a need, a document that specifies how trust or trustee money should be spent, somebody can produce that, we should honor it. If not, we should redefine it so that we can all come to an agreement
That's what I
and
just
move
said.
forward.
That's what I just said. Let's just define it as of this date, that it's going to be this. This is what it's used for. It's specified in the line item, so everybody is perfectly clear.
Okay, but the way that you defined it means that
I'm just using that as an example.
I know, but the way that you define it with maintenance means the maintenance account now disappears and becomes part of the trust account. The way the trust account was originally, by memory, was not major maintenance. That's why there was a separate maintenance account. The trustee account was for furnishings in the house, was for taking care of wallpaper and curtains and those type of things. That's what the trustee account was for.
Well, that's
why the Friends Group put money into the trustee account for years. They was hoping that when the house got restored, that money would be used for wallpaper, which it was never used. Okay?
Well, then we can define it like that.
Maintenance account, trustee account, donation account, slash rainy day, slash whatever name you want to call it.
Furnishings is different than maintenance.
I just said that.
Yeah, no, I'm just clarifying.
Trustee account, donation account.
Okay, so do we all agree to that? Nod your head.
And trustee would be up to the spending of the trustee account would be up to the
Those
discretion.
specific items that we just talked about. He says furnishings, which is a broad category. So if we decide for some reason, the city decides we're going to put carpeting in, that's a furniture. City, it's just like we have SDC accounts. You can only spend the SDC account on these things. And what Rocky's asking for is that those accounts be spent for those specific things, as you define it. Am I correct? It's a fund that can be spent for those specific items that you list. And we could probably put in a little caveat that there might be something that comes up in the future. Maybe we need curtain rods.
Because the thing that's beneficial for that is the Friends Group is going to have a lot of money. And they do have a lot of money. In fact, they probably have more than what's in the donation account for the city. So when the Friends Group has their pocket of money that they can do whatever they want with it, they are more inclined to throw some of that money into the trustee account if they know exactly what the city's spending it on. Because if it's just a rainy day account or a slush fund, which has been treated for years, they're not going to put a dime in.
Okay, we've all agreed that we're going to redefine those account names.
Okay, move on. Let's go to something else.
Okay.
So, make one comment.
Yes, Mr. Mitchell, go ahead.
I understand where Commissioner Smith's trying to get to. I think legally, and this, I don't know if Mr. Zook can answer this or if this is a question for Mr. Kobeisman, but if you call it a trustee account, then you need trustees, a trustee or trustees to manage that account. So are we talking about needing to have a separate structure to control that account? Or who is the trustee or the trustees if we're going to?
City is the trustee.
And that's what I was trying to get at.
The city is the trustee.
That's why we need to find the documents about what the trustee was and the history of that trustee account and track it, find out what happened.
And
that's going to give us,
Mayor McGriff,
we have that, we don't have an answer.
Mayor McGriff, when you say the city is the trustee, is that the city commission or city staff or some subset?
The city commission, if it says city.
Well, part of it is that, again, this is part of the question. If Mrs. Powers didn't establish a trust account, then there isn't It's a name. It's not a real trust account that she would have established. It's the only way we would have had a trust account is if she established it and the city became the trustee. That's the only way. It just doesn't get created out of thin air by somebody calling it that. It was a name that was used.
Prove it.
I don't have the ability to prove it. I'm just telling you what I know from my experience in reading through many deeds that she filed for all of these houses. And they're all pretty much the same.
But I'd like to know where the wording came, that the city account established in perpetuity, et cetera, et cetera. That wording came from somewhere, and it's a city document.
Okay,
we need to know where it is.
All right, so need to find that one particular question out, and we're going to create these different line items. The MOU, which I asked for 2 meetings ago, was updated, but we didn't get it, so I don't want to beat this. We've already, the horse is dead in here. So the thing that we talked about, there was a disagreement on, is that I feel very strongly that we need to have memorandums of understanding with each of the groups that we are dealing with, because that way it is very clear as to who's doing what. And they have been, hopefully will be worked on together, because that's what an MOU is.
Sure. Thank you. Just so we've been going in circles, and I just want to make sure that we're all in the same place. So the 3 accounts that we want there to be is the trust. That would be for the capital improvement.
Yeah, but I think there's still a question about, because that is, as Frank said, that's a legal term. There is no trustee. The city's the trustee.
And that's why I asked the question earlier.
If there is such a thing.
So it's been proposed to have the trustee account. And then what were the other 2?
There was a donation / sort of events account. Yeah, because donations are,
yes,
from events.
Yes.
So that we're not buying cupcakes out of the maintenance account. And then there was a maintenance account.
Okay. Because what I'm just having a hard time understanding is the difference between what the trust would be used for versus the maintenance.
Furnishings.
Then
We've already been over this.
Let's call it what it is then. Trustee account to me is a legal term which is making me nervous.
Good.
Because there is no trust account. Mrs. Powers did not establish a trust account.
You don't know that.
It's not in the deed of sale. Where else would it be? She put those things in her deeds of sale. Where did the funds go?
I can tell you where any of the money would.
Okay, please, we're not having any conversations from the audience. I'm sorry, it's just too distracting. Go ahead, Melissa.
Well, it's the line item that was shown in the presentation. It's a admissions line item under the recreation budget, but it's in the general fund.
So we're allocating that previous slide to change the subject for a moment.
Thank you.
We're allocating a half of a full-time equivalent for one function. You can go back a slide. And some percentage there. So those last 2, we say that we're spending half of FTE for a recreational programmer.
Correct.
So that amount is half of 35,000.
No, it's full.
That's the 0.5.
Yeah, that's what 0.5 equals.
Okay, that's what we're spending.
Right, yes.
And then the other one is some percentage of that person, the recreation persons.
Yeah. Admin.
Do they log hours against that, or that's just a way?
It's an estimate based off of.
For the main staff, but the part-time staff created specific.
So do people fill out time cards, or they allocate time, or just say, well, that person can spend half their time?
Are you saying the part-time person, or are you asking?
Yeah, either one.
The part-time position is completely dedicated to the Herman.
Okay.
Yeah, they're there.
That's the last item.
Yeah.
The other position is some percentage of,
It's
it was
a
10%,
percentage
that
of
percentage.
But no, we don't charge.
You don't allow cotton in specific.
The project we're looking.
All right.
So for events, that money,
out of that 1250, I might add into that donation account to buy cupcakes for an event that I know that we are going to generate revenue on, that's going to go directly back into that account.
That one does look like a catch-all account. But its total value is $1,250 for an
For
operational
the
year.
recreation event line item, yeah, I mean, that's for all of our recreation events, or most of our recreation events go into.
Have you ever not exceeded it? And you may
It
not know.
depends, yeah.
Okay. Seems like a paltry amount. That's why I said it. I've got nothing further. Do you have anything further tonight?
Don't be so sure.
Well, there's research to be done. There's
Right.
terminology to clean up, and we still have the. Mr. Mitchell and I agree. If there, and you have intimate familiarity with this person. This is person who I want to honor the wishes of whoever bequeathed this to us. If they're plainly stated in another document because they're not here, if in fact the trust was set up with trustees, then show me. If not, then let's agree to define it and go forward with it as we should. Agreed.
Yeah, I agree, but I can tell you that the only trustees that I'm aware of are in her last will and testament. Her son Quincy and her son Albert III were the trustees of her estate and account. That's it. And when she passed, they dispersed everything, donated whatever they didn't want to keep, sold off stuff, and that was kind of it.
Well, at that point, it would be solved.
That's right. That's what I'm trying to get at, is that I don't believe it.
I understand.
That exists anymore, because she never made the city or the Rose Farm or the Ainsworth House or any of those houses, she never made a trust account.
Okay.
The trustees were people, and her daughter, Diana, was the original trustee, and then she passed, and then the boys picked that up after she moved
and
on.
even if that is true, that's great, but we don't know that as fact. Second of all, if the city set up, especially if the city commission set up a trustee account, that can't be changed by staff either. That's the kind of documents I want to see.
You're suggesting that the city set up a
Well,
trust account?
Well, we know
A
there's no,
trust document, excuse me, not an account, a document.
yeah, well, we know there was an account. That's not debatable. We know that. So either it got set up by Ruth or it got set up by the city itself. Either way, it existed. We need to find out how it existed, how it went
Well,
away.
a trust account and a trust document are two different things.
I'm just saying trust account, which is all the city wording that we've been using for decades, referring to a trust account.
So the trust account was housed in the city's records, not.
Prove it.
Yeah.
You may not be able to.
All right, so
That's the point.
we previously had talked to staff about suspending negotiations and discussions about MOUs. But I think we need, for everybody's understanding, we need to have some agreements with organizations that we work with. And I would support starting over, working with the organizations to put together memorandums of understanding so that it is perfectly clear, and if we don't have to come back here when you and I are 90 and say, yes, I remember when we talked about that and we were supposed to have gotten MOUs with people, so that it's clear who is doing what.
Right now, it is very clear, based on information from our attorney, which all MOUs that were past signed are in effect, period. So we have MOUs, all the past MOUs are good, which is exactly what those groups are following, and can follow until any new MOUs are signed. So there's MOUs. We do based on the old ones. The old MOUs are in effect, according to our attorney, which was very clearly stated, which is
I
why
thought some of them had expiration dates.
they do, but the old, if they can expire, they're still valid until we
Until
renew
the
them.
new one is taken care of.
That's why we got rid of them.
Well, why don't we just update the one that we already have?
That's what.
If you can get the Friends group or any of these organizations to sign off on, which they will not.
Well, some of the groups we don't have an MOU with, but the ones that we do, then we should
handle
update
those
them
however you'd like.
and make sure that both parties are in agreement, because that's how they're supposed to work. And then they can come back to this. So I would like to suggest that we direct staff to begin the process of creating an updated MOU based on the ones that we already have. And if there's any new language that needs to get worked out and negotiated, to me, that just seems logical.
I agree with you. The worry that I have is when we start, and this will open up a whole nother can of worms, when we start comparing MOUs, because if
They're not all the same.
well, I know that, but you have to take that into consideration. If certain MOUs ask for a certain percentage of money from certain groups and other groups get a different percentage taken away from them, that's going to cause a wrinkle into how these groups feel about their MOUs. That's what we have to care about.
I don't see an MOU being written as one size fits all. They have to fit the
I'm just
specific.
saying, it's going to
specific situation.
It's going to be a timely. It's going to take time to get through this.
Well, I don't think it's really going to take that much.
No, we've had 5 things so far. We've gotten nowhere.
I'm talking about the work with the communities.
Okay, good luck.
Well, I want to try to be positive about it. I don't want to put a lodestone on it and say, oh, it's never going to happen.
I'm sure it will all work out.
The important thing to me is an MOU negotiation is in fact a negotiation from an equal playing field, not a dictate, not either accept this or else. I don't want to hear that at the conclusion of this next round. I want to hear that everybody came away with they're satisfied or equally dissatisfied with the agreement they got.
The MOUs are give and take. Everybody gets something.
Well, that's
So
not what we heard though.
Well, I
I'm not gonna
understand that,
deal
but
with
that's
that.
also not what we heard from staff either. So that's why
I
we
know.
talked about, let's begin fresh.
Try and figure out what deals with the trust.
Right.
Review
Yes.
the value of the existing MOUs for those that have them, and if they're
And the
tenable
ones
and
that
it
don't
makes
need to
sense,
create one.
continue using them.
The
They
ones
need to
that
be
we don't have
modified,
need to be created.
review it.
So,
And if and when we do figure out documentation of the trust, having more clarity as to what is dedicated toward is obviously something we would need as well.
Who exercises control over.
Absolutely.
And what
I want that
organizations are
problem
we
right
trying
now.
to get MOUs with?
the Friends of the Ermitinger, the youth sports, pickleball, who else? Parks Foundation,
Parks Foundation.
Soccer.
soccer. So that's,
Thing is, we can change soccer. We haven't heard any complaints about soccer.
well, if there's no complaints, then don't. If it ain't broke,
From
don't
Oregon
fix it.
City Soccer. We haven't received any complaints from Oregon City Soccer. They've been fine with their arrangement. So should we change it and say, we're gonna change your MOU there?
I think we already did as a commission, put a stop to all of them.
Well, he says.
But I'm saying if we go back and have these conversations,
Start working
Oregon
around.
City Soccer is fine with their MOU.
Then I would say,
So
leave
are
it.
we going to change Oregon City Youth Sports MOU?
I say you advise soccer that everyone is under review. Are you satisfied with yours? And if they say, yes, we are, you're done. If they say, we'd
exactly.
like it reviewed because we feel for whatever reason it needs to be, then you review it. But they may simply come back and say, we're satisfied.
And then are we going to just change Oregon City Youth Sports to $3?
No,
Is that what we're saying? No.
we did
We're
not
not
vote
saying-
on $3. We're not voting on
Okay,
anything.
so Oregon City Youth Sports, we're not doing anything.
Well, doesn't their MOU need to be? I presume that eventually we will vote on something, so I guess you just leave that blank.
Yeah, you leave that number to be filled in upon a regular vote of the city
Right.
commission.
Right now, the old MOUs are fine, and we should be following all those. That's what we are doing right now, right? We're following all the old MOUs.
I don't even know if Oregon City
Yeah,
Sports
we
has
don't
a vote.
have- We don't have MOUs for Oregon City Soccer and Oregon City Youth
Right.
Sports, because we put those on hold.
Right.
So you're saying to move forward with Oregon City Youth Sports leave their fee blank.
Yes.
And if Oregon City Soccer is fine with their arrangement, move forward with them.
Yes.
Yeah, and one organization, it's up to each individual organization. Don't go and say, you don't go to Oregon City Sports, say, well, Oregon City Soccer said, they don't care. What's my deal? What? Because each one is going to be different.
They are different. That's why I said we're not doing a
Yeah.
one size fits all. That doesn't work.
I get
Each
it. I got it.
situation is different.
So for pickleball,
They don't have one fee to create.
they don't have one, they said they're not paying anything. So are we
Well,
just
that's-
gonna tell them
that's
that
what they-
they don't have to pay anything?
Well, they
Right?
submitted an alternative MOU, did they not? I read one
Yes,
a
they
couple
did.
weeks back.
We could never come to terms on any fee schedule. We had offered some solutions, but nothing was ever accepted.
Just because they said they don't want to pay anything doesn't mean that that's what we said.
So you're telling me to charge Hillendale pickleball?
I am not telling you that. My personal experience with them over the years, I walked onto the court and played, no fee. They provide a service that Parks does not pay. Once again, I value volunteerism. So what is it we hope to accomplish? Are we
We're
talking,
actually doing our own pickleball program in this.
are we
in this summer.
duplicating what already exists at a more efficient?
We're going to offer the pickleball program because part of the impasse with Hillendale Pickleball Club is we said we would invest. We bought nets, we bought supplies, so they wouldn't have to purchase those, so they wouldn't have to feel the need to charge people. So we were absorb some of that cost, so then it could be open up to everyone instead of charging a drop-in fee or an annual fee. They weren't open to that as a solution. We also talked about working on programming together to offset the costs as an option. So they're still at the point where they're not willing to pay anything. So,
But they're charging people.
but they're charging people to participate.
That's not been my experience, I gotta tell you. Not my experience, or the experience of my family. I walked on and played for free. My family in more recent times walked on and played for free. So I can't sit here and tell you
Well,
that.
Tim West, who's our chair, has already communicated they charge a drop-in fee. There is an annual fee. Your name's O'Donnell. That's probably why you didn't get
They
charged.
didn't know me from Adam.
But what
There's that.
what I'm saying is, it's already established they have fees that they want you to charge.
Yeah,
So-
that's what they told me.
So you're telling me to not charge them.
And where do those fees go to?
Their fees go to them.
So if we have, so basically what the suggestion is that we have a pickleball program. If pickleball is truly open, there should be no fees charged for anybody. Not by them, for sure. If we're supplying the nets and we're doing whatever, then I don't see why they have to be charged. Or people have to be charged.
Well, what are we gonna do? Are we gonna have open hours? Are we gonna send a Parks employee down there to open?
I recommend you're going to manage the program.
Oh, that's a whole different discussion.
But we're still open to working with the pickleball club. Just the impasse is them charging and not wanting to pay. So if that's something that we could figure out, we can definitely move forward, but that's where we are.
Well, once again, when you start operating a program, you're gonna assign a cost to it. What does it cost you to operate that program? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's a whole different, as we said, that's a very unique situation. So look at it as it is.
So if we have a pickleball program and we are, let's say we charge whatever, some number to be in to play, then to me that's different than a private organization charging somebody to play on court that it belongs to everybody in camp. So, anyway. I will follow up.
You might guess.
He's my neighbor.
What else do we have?
Nothing, because I'm
Neighborhood association.
So the last thing about neighborhood associations, sorry, Jacob is not up there.
He's getting there.
So with neighborhood associations, there's been a lot of conversations around access to shelters. So part of the issue that we ran into with the neighborhood associations is as it was set up, the library was available for neighborhood associations hosting neighborhood association meetings. And Greg is already doing a good job of hosting those. We're currently working on the community development community room renovation to make sure that that facility is available as well. So when it came to the question around shelter rental, at the time, shelter rental wasn't something that was allocated for use for neighborhood associations and required to get approval from city leadership if we were going to waive any kind of fees associated with that. And at the time, we didn't have that approval to provide that service to them for free. We ended up trying to look at other options in regards to offsetting the cost. And we had met with the staff liaison, Christina, for CIC, and she said that there were postcard and communication funds available with CIC that could offset those costs. And we were wanting to have a formal policy incorporating shelter rentals with the permitted use of the postcard and communication funds for the CIC budget to pay for the fees. So the city would still offset those costs for those shelter rentals, and we would still provide that service to the neighborhood associations to provide shelter rentals.
Are we charging neighborhood associations to use the facility for their meetings?
No.
No.
Okay.
Well, as somebody who has been chair of their neighborhood association twice, I would not support charging a fee for shelter rent. What the neighborhood association should be responsible for is that they rent a shelter. They need to go through the formal process of renting it. There would be no fee, but they're also responsible for making sure it's all cleaned up. I think that that's only reasonable because in my opinion, the neighborhood associations are an arm kind of the city. We have charters for each one of them that were signed, and everybody has a responsibility of what they do. So to me, it doesn't make any sense other than having them so that it's reserved. So they don't just show up and then somebody says, look, I reserved this shelter, and we're saying, oh, well, we're the neighborhood association, we're here. No, they should have to reserve it if they want to use it for something. So that
I agree with that.
Yeah, and that we follow the same policies, like you clean up after yourself. That to me makes total sense.
We as a city have pledged support.
Exactly, and I don't think it should come out of the fund for postcards because that is strictly for communication.
I would agree. For this one, it's different because the defining the relationship there is difficult because they are autonomous, but we have a budget for them. So that is exclusively funded by the city. And so when it comes to this, and I think about charging neighborhood associations from the account that we fund, that's where I have the issue. And I would, after having thought about this, I think some sort of compromise, like giving a certain amount of hours per year for each neighborhood association to make rentals. They still have to go through the regular process, and nothing is reserved especially for them, but going through the regular process, if they have 8 hours per year that they can use on a community barbecue that they want to do over the summer, letting them have those unspecified amount of hours that I'm just throwing out right now. And then after that, charging it.
I think that's making it too, I appreciate your thought, but I think it's making it too complicated. I just want to say, you go through the regular reservation process, you reserve, if you want to, like the Kanema Ice Cream Social, they want to use the thing at Kanema Children's Park, they reserve it so that they have use of it, and they just clean up after themselves. I don't want to go through a formula of 8 hours because all the time they're putting into being a neighborhood association to me is part of that whole process of us supporting goal one. And again, as I said, we have charters for each one of them. So we've already sanctioned the neighborhood associations and said, this is something we feel is important. This is something we're going to be doing. They're not private nonprofits. They're an arm of the city.
albeit maybe not. So I don't support doing any formula. If they want to use it twice a year for their neighborhood events, then so be it.
I agree with what
If it's not available, then you have to pick a different day.
I agree with what the mayor and Commissioner O'Donnell said. We're trying to encourage these neighborhoods to grow and get more attendees at their meetings. And yes, they need to make a reservation, but the fee should be waived, no matter how many hours they want to do it.
Yeah,
The more merrier, as far as I'm concerned.
I don't want to limit it.
Okay, I would support that as well.
Okay, all right. Frank?
Yes.
Okay,
Reserving a shelter,
right.
not an entire park.
Oh, no. If they want to reserve an entire park, have any of them requested to reserve an entire park?
Just trying to clarify the law.
We're agreeing to, if they want to use a shelter.
Multiple things you can reserve.
Right.
Clear what we're.
They want, my understanding is that the issue came up with Panema wanting to use the shelter at Panema Park for their ice cream social.
I agree with that, and I just wanted to say the only reason why I suggested a limit was so that we weren't put into an awkward situation where there are fights between neighborhood associations for the same spots. But for the sake of simplicity, I would support that as well.
We tell them, hi, we want to use this park. Well, it's already reserved. They don't have to say who it is, just say it's already reserved, and they have to just pick a different time. I don't think neighborhood associations are going to go mano a mano to deal with shelter reservation. I don't know, maybe they are. Maybe they could do it and charge money and then make money for their treasure. So I think we have consensus on that.
Thank you.
Anything else you had on our list? All right. Anything else?
Mayor
Yes,
McGriff,
sir. Yes, sir.
there was one other item that was brought up that is kind of indirectly related to the whole subject of fees, and that is the percentage that we charge contractors at the Pioneer Center in the pool. We had public testimony over the unfairness of an increase in that percentage, and we've not discussed that.
Are you prepared to?
Well, we resolved that. It's on a case-by-case basis. What we try to do is have some standardization between facilities, because what happened is you had one facility charging one percentage and another facility charging another percentage.
So we're talking like example, like the pool and the senior center. Okay.
So we standardized that, and the individual who had an issue with increases, that individual did not get an increase, and they're still at the standard rate, and we will honor that rate moving forward. If someone does have an issue with any of the percentages, they can bring that information to the manager and myself, and we can negotiate a rate that better meets their needs. So that's been resolved.
They can bring it to the commission too, as that lady did that night.
Yeah. And in that situation, I wasn't informed that the lady in question had an issue at all.
Misshape.
Yes.
Well, I said, I think it may be philosophical. The senior center is dealing with a very specific population of people. Now, I know that there are younger people that are more able-bodied that take Zumba or Pilates or whatever there, and they pay a certain fee. But I thought that the services that we were working on to offer, for instance, the foot health type of thing and the blood pressure, and then the people that come in and do the Social Security review for you, the Shiva people, SHIVA, Shiva people, the people that come in and help with tax accounting. That is, when you think of a senior center, those are the types of activities that you think about being offered. We have Meals on Wheels. We have other things that we are trying to help support that population. And, I wouldn't say that everybody there is, rolling in dough. A lot of people that use it are on a fixed income. And, there's a little bit of an obligation, I think, in our society that we, need to do that. And I mean, every city has senior centers pretty much that we're trying to call it the Pioneer Community Center, but, we all fall back to the Senior Center because that was its name for like a million years. So, but it's, again, those services are, some people, that's the only way they can get those services like that. I'm not looking at you because
I'm just somewhat
senior centers.
No, I'm just somewhat amused because we make a distinction for seniors and I talk about youth and it's like,
he's working, so I understand you wanted to do standardization, but again, it's one of those things where the goal is not to, I'm not trying to make money for it. But the exclusive, I don't say that there's an exclusive use of getting your feet taken care of at the senior center, but nobody else can come in and get it put care of. It's just slightly different. So. All right, shall we adjourn? You would love to adjourn? You want to do you have committee reports? Yeah, you do, because we're, 5-205 tolling all day long.
wow.
Oh, I've been
This will
doing.
be second verse, same as the first.
I feel like it's been my life. All right. You recently attended South Fork Water Board, so.
Well, what's interesting about South Fork is we're in a little bit of a state of flux due to our Westland counterparts elections with, we have Mr. Relier who did not win the last election, and now he's going to run against another South Fork member. So we've got some, we don't know what the future lineup is going to be at the moment.
They get sworn in on the 13th. The two councilors.
Right, but then when's the next election for mayor will be current mayor versus Mr. Relier. Both of those currently sit on the South Fork. So.
Well, that's not going to change immediately, but we need to fill the other position. And I know that the mayor is trying to figure out who would be the best suited. So.
That's all I got to report in South Fork.
Commissioner Smith.
I have been.
Has Heritage Partners met?
Oh, yeah. We did meet on that. Talked about the folks for a Rose Festival parade. Looking for walkers for that. The tourism. Well, the heritage. Oh, yeah. Well, they can probably go. But I'm talking about Heritage Coordinating Committee. CHP hasn't met recently.
Yeah. Coordinating Committee is not on our list. So
that's, that was all we were talking about, getting ready for the parade and the float, which is being funded by the city.
The other thing, well, I can mention under mine. So tell us what is the latest letter that we've sent out on I-205 tolling, because I've gotten quite a few communications from Mr. Lewis and Mr. Wilson.
So I'll start with CIC. And so we recently met and we introduced our new community engagement specialist, which was a part of the Youth Advisory Commission policy. So this person is also going to be dealing with our neighborhoods and with the CIC. So we introduced her, and that was great because I think the neighborhoods have for a long time wanted to have someone who's just for community engagement. And so I'm really excited about having that position there. We also talked about, I think a couple months ago, we had Mr. LaSalle come in and to our regular meeting and give concerns about the lack of meeting minutes. And so we've started going through those. And I want to give a shout out to our city recorder team who have been diligently going through that despite obstacles out of their control. And lastly on CIC, as I've been saying for a long time, this conversation about being able to use the shelter reservations, stuff like that has been top of mind. And so I appreciate this commission's support of that. And so I'm excited to see that move forward. C4, this relates to the tolling diversion subcommittee as well. So I'll start with the tolling diversion subcommittee. We basically had a meeting and talked about what we would want to see in a letter for the I-205 tolling environmental assessment public comment period. I've discussed that ODOT has extended the deadline, but that didn't really help us anyway because of when our meetings aligned for C4. But we basically talked about which values we wanted to be included in that letter. And then at full C4 committee, we voted and approved to send that. It's my understanding that our public works staff is working on a letter that we will be signing on at our next regular meeting. So that will be coming as well. This is the main concerns that were discussed were the fact that ODOT and the localities don't have a similar definition of what mitigation is. Mitigation is not adding sidewalks on Main Street to deal with the Arch Bridge traffic that we all know is going to be there. And so we're calling out how mitigation from ODOT is not sufficient. We're talking about how even to get the finances about how they're going to fund this thing, it took a public records request, and how we're hoping there will be a little more partnership moving forward. And the reason why they didn't want to give that out was because it showed that the tolling revenue wouldn't even cover the projects they want to do on the Abernathy. And then lastly, blanking on it now, but it will come back to me. But those were the kind of values that were centered around that letter, and I would assume they'd be on our city letter as well. The county is sending them. So everyone's sending in letters, and the last thing is that instead of an environmental assessment, we are requesting that they go back, start over, and do an environmental impact statement, which is a much lengthier process and has a lot more details involved. Because I've read through this document with the appendices, it is very, very long. And my big concern has been the economic impacts that it's going to have on Oregon City, specifically Main Street. And when I was reading through this report, I first went to the economic impacts appendix, and they did not talk about how it's going to negatively affect Main Street. What they did talk about with economic impacts is that the construction is going to create jobs.
And that's true.
So since I'm now the co-chair of that committee, I requested that we have our next meeting dedicated entirely to economic impacts, specifically as it relates to the jobs that are already there.
Please
that
feel
are going
free
to be
to forward
impacted.
the report that I got from Joe Cartwright that I sent to you guys with the economic information in it, which basically says something completely different than what they're saying. And this is something we also had to get by public record request.
So that's what I have.
And what I saw something from Trent about a C4 retreat. What's that?
Yes, there is a lot of fun. So there is a C4 retreat coming up, and everyone is invited.
What does that mean?
It's basically where it's kind of like the retreat that we held.
We're gonna do goal
I
setting.
think I'll be in this.
The opposite of a dance.
Cheryl, please. It's picking up on the mic. So they're gonna set goals for the transportation projects, or explain more, because I looked on the email and I was like, what does it mean?
The topics are regional coordination in response to tolling, the housing crisis, and then there was a third one that's escaping me right now.
And this is when and where?
I don't have that.
I didn't get that far in the email because I had else popped up.
But everyone is encouraged to join, including the public. So,
Rocky, I think you should go. Can we get that information in case somebody's vying to go? Mr. Mitchell, I think you got your report taken care of, and
I have nothing to add.
nothing to add. Okay, all right. We haven't had a meeting of the West group. They're trying to put together a meeting, and so we've done a bunch of doodle polls, and I don't know when the meeting is yet, so I'm still waiting on that. They did send out a very handsome, very well done report about what they've done. And one of the things I know that's coming up is they're going to have a SOLVE event, and they want the West committee members to participate, and I will try if I can fit that in my schedule. Downtown Association Board, our executive director, for the record, has resigned, and so we are in the process of determining what we want in the next executive director. She's taking a job out. So we are going to be not only looking at what we want, but we're working closely with Main Street. They have a whole list of items that you should be looking at. We're looking at the current job description, and then we take that to the board. The other thing is we're going to probably pull some of our stakeholders to ask them what they would like and try to get that in there. Impact, I'll just be honest with you, the last meeting was absolutely boring. It was all about the regional transportation system, and it was focusing in on alternative modes of transportation, by which Councilor Sherman from Happy Valley and some other jurisdictions chimed in that we don't really have a regional transportation system for alternatives because the bus don't come here, as I will quote Councilor Sherman. So planning for it in the future kind of is, a moot point. South Fork, as we said, the director is in the process of presenting a budget, which he'll be working with Mr. Zook on that. So we have our budget committee formed, and we will be looking at the budget. The good news is that it looks like Wes is going to elect the city of West Lynn to use a temporary sewer pipe that's going to be coded for water usage so that they don't have to totally detach, which is one of the things I asked our executive, is that we needed to put a contingency in the budget for what happens if they do disconnect and what happens to the revenue that we are anticipating from West Lynn that won't be there. But if this comes to pass, that West says they're going to do this, then there won't be any really reduction in revenue. It might be a very short time where they're disconnected. So that was really good to hear. I also asked the director to propose to the South Fork Water Board that we do a forensic audit of our computer system based on our situation here in Oregon City. And although it sounds all great, I asked Michael to get in touch with Wyatt to make sure that we get that done, because I think it's important. We just don't know. We don't know what we don't know. So he'll probably be bringing that to us shortly. And then the exciting conference, the American Water Association, is going to be happening at the middle of June in Toronto. And I have been strongly urged to attend. I'm signed up to go. I've been reviewing the proposed program, and I found some things that I can attend that are relevant to us. A lot of it has to do with some water conservation issues. Also, there's a couple of sessions on communicating to users, how you can better do that. I haven't seen anything about tours. A lot of the tours are already sold out, so I'm not going to go get to look at pipes or bursting situations or whatever, but I will try. We're going to try to coordinate going to things that will be beneficial to the entire board.
What is the organization called?
American Water Association.
And it's in Toronto?
Yes, it was in San Antonio.
It changes every city, but I've never seen it. Yeah, but
this year.
Okay.
that's a selling point.
So, Willamette Falls and Landings Heritage Area, actually they have been meeting in person at our library. They've been able to reserve for an hour and a half. So we meet again on the 17th. We met last month at the library. We went over our goals. We had a goal setting session with a consultant, and it was very productive. We have now some draft legislation that we are looking at to move forward to get the national designation. We have a state designation, and it's still the goal of the organization to move that forward. The other thing I should add that's also Willamette Falls related is that I've been asked by Councilor Lewis and Chair Judy Smith to apply for a position on the Willamette Falls Locks Foundation. I basically explained to Commissioner Smith that I felt that Oregon City needed to be represented on that. And since I already have a long history on working on the locks project through my work with the National Trust for Historic Preservation, that I would be a good candidate, and she agreed and sent me the application. So I've applied. I'm just waiting to hear back. It's an appointment by the governor. So, and then Willamette Falls Legacy Project, I had an informal meeting with the staff, not Andrew, and I asked them to give me an update on what the heck is going on, since we've heard hide more hair from them. And I will eventually meet with Andrew Mason, but I'm holding off on that at the moment. But those are my current assignments. I am going to, just for staff knows, most staff knows, but there is a session tomorrow that I will be attending. That is a presentation by Representative Susan McLean, who is one of the original authors of the tolling bill from 2017. And she will be giving a presentation with the Deputy Director of ODOT, who's, I apologize, I cannot remember her name.
Lindsay Baker.
Lindsay Baker, thank you, sir. Lindsay Baker is not a testimony situation. It is basically a presentation. I do plan to go and wear my no tolling t-shirt, so I'll be wearing that. I'm going basically to listen. And in the last but not least is in the last week, I have been, with the help of our communications manager, thank you, Mr. Lehman, talking about tolling on Channel 2, Channel 6, Channel 8, OPB. I've had the same message. I had the opportunity to look at Sunday's thing when they responded to Mandy Putney. And I tell you, I got very cross about it because they were saying they are listening and that they're taking everything into consideration. I'm sitting there thinking, are you kidding me? And so they asked her a question specifically about, well, the jurisdictions are asking for answers. She says, oh, it's all in our reports. And and maybe it's there, it's buried, but I specifically said in all of my interviews that we want specific responses to the letters we've been sending since 2020, and that has not been forthcoming. So that is the message that I've been promoting, as well as the mayor of West Lynn. He and I were on the Sunday program together. So you'll see me if you watch it. I'm zooming in from my kitchen because that was the only place I could get a good signal. I don't know what was going on with the signal. But anyway, so you'll see my kitchen because I didn't have time to blur it out. They said, you're on in one. And it was like, I'm on. So that's my report. The manager. And we don't have anything from our staff. Okay. All right, we are adjourned. Thank you, staff, for attending.